Right. Good evening. This is the planning board session of Wednesday, September 11th, 2013. My name is Christopher Rich, and I am the acting chair at the present time until Chairman Lacrotelia gets here. Seated with me to my right, Bob Watts, and to my left, Matilda Evangelista. Without further ado, members of the board, without objection, I'd like to have a brief moment of silence in honor of those who gave their lives 12 years ago today. Thank you. First on the agenda, approval of minutes. Is there a motion to?
I move that we approve the minutes pending discussion
For July 24th
and
and
August 14th.
Second.
Motion's been made in second. Any changes? I saw Harry's, and that basically covered every issue that.
I received those changes and I've made those changes and I brought a hard copy for you to.
Great.
Are we still putting these on the computer, the minutes?
Online?
On the
Yeah.
town website?
Yeah,
Yeah, we
okay,
didn't decide to stop.
all right. All right, I just
They go up
wondered.
as soon as they're approved, so,
Yeah.
and it's
Super.
part of our Thursday routine.
Great.
I did get a chuckle, though, on one of the minutes where it said I was absent, and then the
Yeah.
first statement was, Mr. Rich says. I know I'm low profile, but.
Spirit of Mr. Rich. Let's see how
This ghost,
No further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, 3-0. On both sets of minutes. Correspondence, Mr. Planner.
We received 8 items of correspondence. I'm not gonna go through those 8, but I wanted to note, the town of Rowley is, let us know about their public hearing notice for their moratorium on a registered medical marijuana dispensary. That's being held next week. We received some correspondence from the applicant requesting a continuance for the public hearing regarding 124 Tenney Street. Also relating to 124 Tenney Street is we received an email from the building inspector regarding a request at the last public hearing on the property about nonconformities. We also received from the building inspector something that was raised during a public hearing regarding 124 Tenney Street by the applicant regarding operations at 1 Industrial Way. Engineering Alliance letter of response and updated site plan documentation, and that is relating to 124 Tenney Street as well. So most of the correspondence relates to 124 Tenney Street. In brief, the applicant has requested a continuation. The engineer and the technical review engineer are maintaining open communication about getting the site plan. You received in your packet an updated site plan as well as a copy of that correspondence. So the board should be well informed at the next meeting.
Okay, before we do anything on 124 Tenney, I think the proper order would be a motion to allow the petitioner's request for continuance, and then a motion to include all of the correspondence concerning it, 124 Tenney, to be carried over to be presented again at that continuance stage, and that we not look at any of it now and
That way
discuss
we
it.
don't take any testimony.
Correct.
Well, yeah.
You gotta open up the public hearing, right?
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say. You have to open it up to discuss anything.
Okay, is there a motion to open the, why don't we get that out of the way?
I make a motion to open up the special site review hearing for 124 Tenny Street.
A second.
Made and second, any discussion? We're giving you up, Bob?
Oh, barely.
It's hot.
One day.
Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
This public hearing was continued from August 14th, and the petitioner has requested a continuance to the next available meeting. And that meeting will be Wednesday, September 25th, and there's nothing on the agenda.
Is that a regularly scheduled?
Scheduled meeting, correct.
Anyone have any problem with that?
Not at all.
Think we can allow that? Do we need a vote on that?
Yes.
Yep. Is that your motion, Tilly, that we
Yes.
allow it?
Yes.
And it's
we
my
will.
second.
Okay.
Made and second, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You gotta vote to accept the correspondence too.
Make a motion to accept the correspondence for 124 Tenny Street.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Can I see the original? It needs to be marked Exhibit 1. Whenever we have
The
correspondence.
email.
Yeah, that's fine. Electronic is fine. But you can mark it Exhibit 1 and just initial it in today's date.
Okay.
And that's what was accepted, that correspondence. If you would include that in the motion, Wendy,
I'm sorry.
that we voted to accept the correspondence marked Exhibit 1. And we did vote on, did we vote on continuing it to September 25th? Yes, we did.
Vote on closing it and you gotta be done with it.
Well, I want to make sure that there's a vote on the record that all of the correspondence mentioned in the, that you mentioned concerning it is continues on through the continuance and is presented again and put on the agenda again for that hearing. Please. Well, if we voted to continue the hearing, we don't have to close it because we're not closing it.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Next on the agenda,
There,
you have Andrea
Acting
DiGiovanni.
Chairman, could I recommend that if there's someone in the audience, maybe we could take the next item so he's not sitting here.
Okay. You sure? We have just a great show. It's the best show in town for the price.
I've never been to one of these.
Oh, you're in for a treat.
I actually have someone up there with the same last name as mine. I'm Stephen Evangelista.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, Tilly, do you have something to tell us about?
Are you the famous baseball evangelistas up here? Heard a lot of things about, those your three sons?
I have 4.
Four sons.
Yes.
Heard a lot of stories about
Mr. Evangelista, come on up and have a seat. Sit in the one that's plugged in.
I just come up to just listen to the meeting, that's all.
Just to listen to the meeting?
I work for Crusoe McGovern Construction. We're at the One Industrial Way. So I had talking to John. John came in and talked to me about,
We let's pull out that correspondence from the building inspector concerning, how is Mr. John Caruso?
What is your first name again, sir?
Steve.
Steve.
So
Is
this
that-
would be under member or public report. Right.
Which purple page is that, Howard?
This is the correspondence.
Yeah, it's under correspondence, but I'm just saying on the agenda where
Okay, well,
member of public report.
okay. Sitting here in the audience and we have something, he made time to come see
That's
us.
the next thing on the
We'll make time to deal with him.
Well, I just wanted to hear what the discussion was, that's all.
You want me to read it?
Tell me which one it is?
It's from John, Wednesday, August 28th.
11:02 a.m.
It's the second to last one, right?
Before the pretty pictures.
You didn't get a,
August.
did you get a copy of this?
Yes.
Okay, so you're familiar with it.
August 28th, 11:02 a.m.
Yeah. Let me grab my copy.
He did gather additional information and he prepared a written response. I didn't have it in time for tonight's meeting. I expect to have it tomorrow.
We don't have any further information.
No.
Do we have a copy of this that we can share with?
Did you get a copy of it, or you got something from John?
I have a letter here.
Is that may be the letter the board hasn't seen yet? Thanks. Yeah, the board hasn't seen this. This was gonna be sent to them tomorrow,
Okay.
so. You wanna read it now?
May as well. You want me to read that?
It's dated September 10th from John Metvier, the Georgetown Building Inspector and Zoning Enforcement Officer, Howard, and members of the board. On October 22nd, you asked me to look into the concrete crushing operation, Georgetown Recycling, on the Caruso and McGovern property at 1 Industrial Way, Georgetown, Mass. The Georgetown Recycling operation has been in operation since July 2008. In early 2008, Caruso and McGovern hired the engineering firm of Beals and Thomas to assist in obtaining all necessary permits to operate an asphalt, brick, and concrete ABC recycling operation on their industrial zoned property. This property was already in use as a contractor's yard with a mixed-use garage and office building constructed in 1997. A DEP, which I believe is Department of Environmental Protection, permit to operate an ABC recycling operation was issued in July of 2008. It appears from the phone logs and certified mailings that the town officials were contacted and aware of the proposed recycling operation. The application occurred during time when Georgetown did not have a town planner, January 08 to June of 08. The building inspector at that time did not require a building permit or site plan or approval. Respectfully, John Metvier. Any comments from the board?
Hey,
So, yes, I do have a question, Chairman. Based on that letter, you inquired if you needed any permits from the town.
the engineering firm and our attorney did. They worked on it for a while.
Do you have any paperwork or documents that we could trace to see?
I'm sure Beals and Thomas does. I know John said there were logs here
Yeah,
of correspondence here. There was an ad that went in the paper for 28 days, I believe. So there is a paper trail, yes.
I think we should try to get a hold of that and see what transpired on our end. But to go to the selectmen for a permit is, that's not the steps that you do.
Well, I believe we went to the state for the permit, and
Yeah.
the town was CC'd the whole way through the whole process with every piece of paper.
Usually the DEP deals with the Conservation Board. So what was the business when you were doing this? What did
It's
you
a good-
intend on doing?
We have 12 crews that go out every day working for National Grid in 35 cities and towns.
Uh-huh.
And we need to make a lot of product for our, bases, when we're laying pipe, for our infrastructures, when we're doing work. So the majority of this is for our self-use. We use it at Crusoe McGovern.
So it would be labeled a transport terminal? Is that what your attorney?
No. So
No?
No, we take, when you say a transport terminal,
Yeah.
we bring in product and we process it down to a usable gravel and use it. We use it as a material that goes on roadways.
Goes through a crusher.
Yes.
Well, I personally, I think I'd like some more information,
Yeah.
because whether the town was notified or not, there is case law that says if the zoning enforcement officer is incorrect, that the operator acts at his peril. And that's why you have lawyers involved in that stuff. It's up to them
Right.
to know and demand that they get the appropriate permits, and, because I don't think our laws have changed for site plan approval. I don't know who was the building inspector in 2008? Was that Charlie Brett?
I think it was.
I would, so is it the wish of the board that we can postpone it or continue this till, and whenever we bring it up, you'll absolutely, if you give everybody your address where you can be
Yeah.
reached.
Well, that's why I wasn't sure what the
I
meeting
appreciate
was
you
about.
coming here.
So,
Well, in brief, what it was that there's an application before the board where the applicant mentioned that there was a use behind, and he didn't know how it had been permitted. And so a planning board member requested that it be looked into, and so that's what started the events.
If it was originally permitted as a contractor's yard, and then you went in and changed the use to recondition, whatever, product into a usable product, meaning gravel,
yeah.
which, do you take old asphalt and grind that up with it?
Yes.
I'm familiar with it. I'm a contractor's kid.
I mean, it's still a contractor's yard. We use it for a lot of it for our self-use.
Right, so, but
Can I see that letter?
it
again
could be,
from John?
it could be construed as a change in use,
Yes,
adding that to it, because a contractor's yard is equipment sits, pulled out, used, some minor repairs. Are those the administrative offices for Caruso and McGovern also?
It's everything. It's the
Big-
one location for everything.
That's it?
Yep. It's the only location we have.
Did you build a structure there?
Nope, no
No
structure.
structure. It's all out in the open.
Yep, it's right in the yard. It's in our yard.
Well, you definitely needed a permit in the local level, you know. And right now, with this limited information that you're giving us, you're gonna have to start the process over again and apply for a permit. Because right now, it sounds like you don't have one from the town.
I would like to see the paper trail. You said there was a paper trail.
That's
would
what I
like-
need from you. You tell me what you need, and I'll give it to our attorney and Fields
Sure.
and Thomas and.
So all I have to do is ask your attorneys to give us a paper trail from beginning to end. And I think what we'll probably end up doing is forwarding it to town council and asking them, you know,
Yeah.
the building inspector either missed it or was incorrect. The building inspector at the time either missed it or was incorrect that it needed, that it was actually a change of use. And Charlie Brett was pretty much up on that. He was a stickler for change of use.
It could have been the guy across the way here. Who was his assistant now? Yeah, wasn't that him? Yeah, that could have been him too. It may not have been Charlie, I'm not sure.
But once you get all the information that you have, you just come in or give me a call and we'll start processing it. And I'll start looking for whatever we have.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
probably
no-
bring this up as a topic on the 25th.
We'll put it on the agenda to discuss it on the 25th.
Okay.
And Why don't we put them on first, because we got a public hearing on that too, so.
Who is your town council? Because I'll have our attorney call him so they can work the
Copeland and
process out.
Page.
I'm sorry?
Copeland and Page.
Well,
I don't
I would
think he
like it
would.
if it needs to come through the planning office
Yeah, it has
first.
to-
Yeah, everything needs to go through Howard. We're very controlling people. We like to know.
That way we can see all the information being
Yeah,
Right, well,
Pass through.
I'm just gonna pass this off to our attorney and to
Sure.
sent
Fields
to
and
me.
Thomas.
have them contact Howard.
Do you have a card, Howard? Or-
Not with me, but
No? Okay. You're on, it's on the,
website.
On the website, yeah.
Good, good.
Town planner, there's a bullseye right next to his name.
Okay,
Is that okay with the members of the board?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we can put that on for the 25th?
Thank you for coming in.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Sorry that
that's all right. I didn't know how the process works, so I figured I'd come here and at least listen to what you had to say. and
Well, it's
go from
nice to
there.
know that Tilly has another son.
It was nice to finally meet you.
Mom.
Next on the agenda is the bylaw amendments, solar and wind generation, the continued public hearing. Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
I move we open the public hearing on solar and wind.
Tilly, second?
Second.
You have updated copies of the articles before you, and these have been revised per my discussion with David Schofield, who is in charge of the municipal light department. And if you recall from the last public hearing, there was discussion about how it would be better described in terms of the tiers of how an application would be made, away from the power generated in terms of kilowatts, which was the way the draft was, and instead move over to use. And what I did was that I broke it down into on-site, commercial, residential, or wholesale. So if an installation comes in and is being considered for installation for sale of the electricity generated to the wholesale market, that's one application. Everything else would fall into the other category, where if it's ground mounted, and it's gonna be a commercial, where it's either ground mounted for consumption on site or ground mounted for residential. Those were the primary changes that were made.
Ground mounted residential is still for that site, or are we
On
talking?
site.
Right, or would we be talking for, could a development put one in for the use of that?
Right. For designed primarily for the consumption of the electricity generated for the
Local.
primary use on site.
To differentiate from, between that and pushing it back out into the grid.
Correct. However, the thing you need to remember is there was a brief discussion when Dave was here about how these facilities may end up generating more electricity than is being consumed, and so they do need to put it back on. But that's just to prevent some
Blowing circuits out.
blowing circuits out. So with the intention of being consumed on site, that's the type of application, and if need be, for any type of surplus, they can put it back
My
on.
understanding was that we don't really have the facility to put it back into the grid.
That's how I got it too.
Say that again?
You have
He
the
doesn't have the
ability to
con-
put it back on the grid. You do not have the ability, it all depends upon the power equipment agreement. So when you have
We can put it on the local grid within.
Georgetown,
Within Georgetown.
right,
But we can't push it back out to,
because of tariffs and other things
Yes.
that need to get in, and that's why
And
it then goes to
technology.
the wholesale market.
yeah.
Well, it's-
Because if Georgetown can't buy it, then they need to go out and find somebody else out of town.
Yeah, that's close, but there's certain agreements in the grid structure that Georgetown's not a participant of. That would allow them to sell it to ISO, who will then distribute it at, and I have to tell you, the rates that ISO pays we'd be making money in this town if we pumped money back out there
Right.
like you read about. They pay huge money at certain times. Like upwards of 5 times what we're charging for residential consumption. I'm serious.
Tilly and I had a discussion briefly, but there was some idea about if it was ground mounted for residential use, that there was some idea that maybe it was a desire to be written into the bylaw that it couldn't be placed in the front yard and to be in rear yard.
Right.
So I haven't written something like that in because there wasn't any discussion on it.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what the will of the board was or the opinion of it.
Well, that's how I felt. I felt that there ought to be some kind of provisions, because the town is 95% is residential. So it's only really 5% of the town that would
Are
be.
there setback provisions in it?
Yes.
What are
But
the s-
there isn't any language that says that any type of ground-mounted solar facility would be allowed in the front yard or is not allowed in the front yard.
Well, if somebody's got a 300-foot front yard and they have a 20-foot backyard,
They can request a waiver if you put it in that it's not allowed there. Or,
For themselves, they probably would put it on the roof, right? You wouldn't.
Tilly, don't ever underestimate the choices of people. You know, I think a
there
setback.
may not be enough square footage on the roof that they want.
Yeah, I mean, I think a setback requirement might be more logical than, I mean, the biggest setback we have from the street in residential area is what, 100 feet? Or 50 feet from the street?
But in the bylaw,
So if you put in the bylaw, it has to be 60 feet from any public way.
I don't think it's nice anywhere in the front. I wouldn't wanna, I think it's not in keeping with the residential at all. You know, if
May-
you
may I
had
interrupt you for a
lots
second?
of land,
Can I interrupt you for a second?
you know,
I'm not gonna speak on it. Wendy, would you let the record show that Tim Howard has arrived at 19 minutes of 8?
The usual.
The usual. Okay, I'm sorry, Tilly, for interrupting you.
to me, I don't think it should be required, allowed rather, in the front of anybody's home. I just think that it's not attractive. It's not, if you're driving by the street and you're gonna see these panels along the lawn, I think it's not attractive at all. I think,
if the applicant has a large 300-foot front yard that you can't see from the street, he can request a waiver
right,
from that.
Is that built in? Is that in there, that a waiver can be, and who grants the waiver?
Yes, the planning board.
Okay.
The
And
language is,
is the criteria set out as what's needed for a waiver?
and tell you the truth, there aren't very many lawns that are that large.
Tilly, across the street from my house, the gentleman that owns the well company,
Over here, yeah, yeah.
I mean, that's one big front yard.
Yeah, but the trouble is that particular lawn, he has a long driveway, and there's a lawn on the side. However, the house next door is really closer to his lawn than he is
Okay,
in
but
the front.
what's a front
So
yard?
I wouldn't,
There's also a house set way back. Their front yard is in front of their house. Their driveway, you can't see the house from the street. See what I'm saying? There's a predicament there. I mean, that's something that,
he would come in
that's
for
why
a
a
waiver.
setback, if it was so many feet from the street,
Yeah.
and the minimum is 50 feet,
the language in here is all setback, yard, buffer, and screening requirements applicable to the zoning district in which the installation is located shall apply. And then the permit granting authority may waive the aforementioned document requirements as it deems appropriate.
As it deems appropriate?
As it deems appropriate.
You know, that's an invitation for what they call arbitrary and capricious.
Right.
There's no criteria. Like, you know, anytime you want from
Gray
anything
area.
from the ZBA, there's criteria that you have to meet. You have to show a hardship, you have to show X, Y, Z.
Right.
You have to meet.
Well,
that
the grounds of
criteria.
a waiver for this tie into the other parts of the bylaws. It's just not explicitly written in here.
What page are you reading that from so I can
For,
follow you?
which one
That you
do you
just
want to
read.
know?
Tilly's question.
That you just read?
4 and 6.
Bit large.
So we can cross out document requirements, or how would you?
Tell me where you are.
The PGA may waive the aforementioned document requirements
What I would-
as it, or,
what ground mount.
as it deems appropriate.
Give me a page that you're on, Howard.
The permit granting authority may waive by an affirmative
The bottom of the
majority
page,
vote.
what's the number?
8, B, on page 8.
Okay.
Any of the submittal and design requirements, if it determines that strict compliance with those submittal and design requirements, because of the size or unusual nature of proposed buildings, structures, or lay of the land, may not be in the best interest of the town and general public.
Page 8.
B waivers.
Did you find it, Chris, on page 8,
It's near the bottom of the
at the
page.
bottom?
Yeah.
Item B, waivers?
On page 8 of of the wind energy facility?
Solar.
Silver.
We're talking about solar.
I thought we were on wind. Okay, wrong church, right pew. Permit granting authority may waive by affirmative majority vote any of the submittal and design requirements if it determines that strict compliance with those submittal and design requirements because of the size or unusual nature of the proposed buildings, structures, or lay of the land may not be in the best interest of the town. You think you might want to add the word practical? May not be practical.
So on the last line, lay of the land, comma, may not be
Practical
practical.
or not in the best interest of the town.
Practical just means it's getting good sun.
Yeah, that's,
No, but what I'm saying is may not be practical. If somebody wanted it and they had it's a front yard, they had a 300-foot front yard that, let's say, is treed, not treed, but has trees. So you're really not gonna see it from the street,
So it's buffered from the
but
street.
it would be in the front yard.
Meaning all the
Well,
setback
that-
requirements.
That would not likely happen because a solar array has to face south. So if it's in the front and you have trees in the front, you're gonna have to cut those trees, or why put a solar array?
Well, but you
in
could
the
have,
shade?
you could have other kinds of shrubbery. You could have big roadies or something that
Well, but
would
that's
block.
good, but that's good.
I think
because
that's
that
the
would-
point that Chris is
That's
making.
what I'm
Right,
saying.
which
I have
would
a
be
problem when
okay.
we say you can't have it in your front yard.
Right, and I agree.
Unless there's
Okay,
some
I'm sorry, I didn't know where
visual,
you were
you
I-
could put
I
up
just
a
have problem with
fence.
saying you can't have it in your front yard, period.
Well, one of
Because they
the,
don't have to be tall, they just have to be at
They're
whatever
low.
Right.
angle, 30-degree or 40.
And the concern is right downtown, you can put in a single panel in your front yard.
And the problem with that.
downtown don't have much yard at all.
Right, but you could.
But
You could do that.
it wouldn't cost justify itself. One panel's not gonna pay for the installation.
Right, but like you said, Chris, you can't underestimate the decisions people do. Maybe they know if they put 2 or 3 panels up, that's just gonna feed them, and they don't need to connect into the town's grid. or
Could I
something.
ask one other question?
But it wouldn't really feed them, you need a lot of
But
area.
that's a financial call that's up to an applicant or up to somebody who wants to buy this. What I'm wondering is, what are the limits that we can place on this kind of thing? What's analogous to this, where we place limits on what people can put in the front yard?
Well, according to Copeland and Page, you mean just strictly on the
In,
front
in,
yard?
in general, yeah.
Or in general?
Well, in front yard specifically, because that's the topic.
All right, well, all they have is a general statement, Copeland and Page, and this was dated 2011. Did you give me this, or did I have it?
Yeah, I probably gave it to you if it's got solar and
Yeah,
wind.
it just says that, no zoning ordinance or bylaws shall prohibit or unreasonably regulate the installation of solar energy systems or the building of structures that facilitate the collection of solar energy, comma, except where necessary to protect the public health, safety, or welfare.
So then it would be up to the zoning officer, I mean, the code enforcement officer, if somebody erected a solar panel that visually impaired drivers going down the street, that they would either have to remediate that impairment or remove the panel. I mean, that's up to
Yeah,
him.
that's a possibility, but one of these bylaws that, from other towns, if you wanted to put it within their vision of the abutting homes, they would need a statement from them in writing that they didn't object to it. And I think that may be a solution.
Tilly,
What you're talking.
I don't think we should put anybody at the mercy of their neighbors.
Right.
But I mean, we ask abutters for their
For their
input,
opinion.
and with respect.
But if you wanted to put solar on your roof,
No,
No, we're talking-
I'm constitutionally in favor of giving people the freedom to do with their property what they want to do, unless it,
I mean, I don't have a problem with the health, safety, but what Tilly just
Right.
said.
right, I
I
don't
don't have a
either.
problem with that
I don't
criteria.
either.
None
Yeah,
whatsoever.
Well, that's how they,
No,
And if they put in, the way the bylaw is if they put in a ground-mounted solar energy facility, it needs to be a site plan application, so the butters would be noticed, they'd have a chance to come in and speak
For residential.
for residential, because it's ground-mounted. If it's roof-mounted, this doesn't apply. Because the thought was, is they're putting in one array or 100 arrays, the board would want to make sure they're not being put in setback areas.
mhm.
Well, wouldn't they have to get a permit from the building inspector to build such a?
construct it, sure.
Structure
doesn't-
is only defined as having a roof. We could put something in here that states if you're gonna be building, you need to get a building permit.
Yeah, I think if you're gonna be putting in a solar array,
An
and it's
installation,
within
yeah.
the setbacks of your property, your buildable setbacks, then yeah, you should have to go to the planning board. And the planning board should have some control over, I mean, is
Make sure it's not a nuisance to abutters and
Right,
other things
right.
like that.
Or there's
I mean, that's what we
reflections
do.
from it that might,
Well, they're black, they don't really reflect, it's not like.
well, they don't necessarily absorb. I mean, if they're shiny, light will bounce off.
Yeah,
That glass.
That's
glass
true.
surface.
It reflects.
But I mean, I think that's just part of the process. Is there gonna be, is there gonna be a problem for a neighbor? It's similar to wind.
And that's under the site plan approval review criteria and procedures.
It's
If it's
Specific use is an appropriate location for such a use, nuisance is not expected. Adequate access to each structure for emergency service equipment. Minimizes glare. Minimizes obstruction of scenic views from publicly accessible locations. So even if they could build the array on the site in the setbacks, as you're saying, Tim, the planning board would have to make sure a chance that it doesn't impact things off the property.
You know, I'm really torn about this because, yeah, I mean, if it's gonna be unsightly, well, maybe there should be consideration. But on the other hand, what if people put in ugly foundation plantings, you
Oh,
know?
I mean, there's a million things. I mean,
Exactly.
What if people have an old motorhome sitting in their front yard like Jewett Street?
Bob, to your point, if they put it in under the review criteria, every abutting property is visually screened from the project. One or a combination of location, distance, planting, existing vegetation, and fencing. So that's another reason why the planning board should have a chance to be able to review it through the site plan application process.
Remember those houses they tore down on North Street a while back? And people complained, they kept complaining to the Board of Health and whoever else they could complain to what an eyesore they were. And the bottom line was, that if you wanna live like a slob and present your yard and your property that way, there is no law prohibiting you from doing that. That being said, if you wanna put a solar array, what's the difference?
I think that's a good point.
Why do we then say, oh, well, you wanna do something that's environmentally friendly, but now you have to come and see us to allow you to do that?
But you know,
I say if it's not within the setbacks, if it's not violating the setbacks, I don't think we should have a whole lot to say about that.
Well, you know,
One person's opinion.
right.
and
But
it
you
also,
know,
it
but
also,
how would you feel as a homeowner that you were trying to sell your house and all you got from the people that were looking at your home was that they didn't like next door, right in the front yard, you have all these panels. And you
Well, I
couldn't
mean,
sell your house.
It would
You know,
stink,
you'd have
but
a
wouldn't
little-
that, it would stink, but
A lot
as,
of neighbors have that problem.
yeah, I mean, if somebody parks their RV that's rusting out,
But what happens is that if they can't sell their house, the value of that house is going
Or the
down.
barn that's falling
And
down.
your-
on their
our
property.
tax
I mean,
base-
Right.
It's infinite examples in this town about
you're right.
Yeah, but
people
our,
that don't
our-
present their
our tax base is based on the market value of the homes on your street. So the value is gonna come down if
Yeah.
they can't sell, and the taxes are with it. So,
And that's, none
that's
of
up
that
to
is
the
a good,
assessors.
none of that is a good thing. We need better quality people than in this town. But the fact is, most people do take care of their property.
Right.
You look, just drive around,
I-
most houses are pretty
Right.
nice.
I don't think you can impose something that's not infringing upon any currently existing laws or zoning setbacks.
And
I
I-
think people can park their pink Cadillac that's all rotted
but
out
I've
in
seen
the
it,
front yard, too.
I've seen it in bylaws that they can. They can put restrictions like that.
I mean,
Like you can't put, like they could even say your swimming pool. If you wanted a swimming pool in your house, it goes in the backyard. It doesn't go in the
no, it
front.
doesn't. Uh-uh.
A lot of
Drive
communities
down, drive
Down
down,
North Street.
drive down North Street.
in
Someone just
town
put one
maybe,
beside
but
their house.
I'm not saying Georgetown, but some communities do
Right,
that.
but we live in Georgetown, and this is how things are here.
I wanna direct everybody's attention, if I may, please, to KMP's, for those who are wondering who KMP is, it's our town council, Copeland and Page. And their letter dated January 20th, 2011, their opinion, memorandum to municipal clients. Chapter 48, Section 3 provides, as Tilly said, no zoning ordinance or bylaw shall prohibit or unreasonably regulate the installation of solar energy systems or the building of structures that facilitate the collection of solar energy except where necessary to protect public health, safety, or welfare. Now, I'm going to play the devil's advocate for a minute to everybody. With that criteria, what does property lines and physical features, including roads for the project site, have to do with that? What does proposed changes to the landscape of the site, grading, vegetation, clearing, planting, exterior lighting, screening, vegetation, or structures have to do with that? Blueprints, drawings of this solar photovoltaic installation signed by a professional engineer licensed to practice in the Commonwealth, what does that have to do with it? 1 or 3-line electrical diagram detailing the solar voltaic installation.
I think there's safety issues in there. I mean,
There are safety issues, but
but-
that's the electrical inspector's job. It's gonna produce electricity, that's his job. Where do we get off with the planning board saying we know anything about 1 or 3-line electrical diagrams detailing solar voltaic installation? Thank God he's not here, because he'll tell us he knows all about it.
well, I think though the point is in general that in order for them to pass this hurdle, they have to convince us that they have that. Not that we necessarily have expertise in that area, but they just have to demonstrate.
Let's look at what we're putting-
Right,
Let's
Right.
look at what we're putting my neighbor who wants to put solar in through. He's gotta hire a PE, he's gotta get an electrical engineer. I mean, this is, who's gonna be able to afford it?
Please, some of these,
Now, let's go back to unreasonably regulate. You've just regulated it to the point where nobody can afford to do it.
I don't follow that.
It says you cannot unreasonably regulate the installation of solar energy systems.
Are you looking at for
King, please letter.
an on-site, or are you reading from the commercial, the wholesale
he's reading K and P.
requirements?
I'm reading K and Ps under chapter 48, section 3.
Right, but you just read something from the bylaw, and I'm asking which section from the bylaw did you read?
What page is
Submission
that?
requirements?
Yeah, page 5, proposed installation plan.
Well, that's something you could waive if it's for residential use for 3 or 4 different properties.
So if somebody comes in here and says they want to put up an array, and they say, well, no, we don't have blueprints or drawings, we don't need that. Who on the board is going to say, oh, that's fine? I don't think anybody's going to say that. And it doesn't say that they have to be in compliance, blah, 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 blah. They have to be signed, it has to be the real deal.
What
And I-
what I'm saying, playing the devil's advocate, I'm
Sure.
not saying I agree with it.
Mhm.
I'm thinking about people suing the town, is that I don't think it passes muster as being a reasonable regulation.
Yeah, look at all the money you'd have to spend.
Exactly.
But I mean, you're gonna have
That's-
to, you're
that's
gonna
what it
have
is.
to do that. And
No, you don't.
you don't think, you don't need to have,
You have the solar contractor come in with his plan, he produces the plan, you either look at it, this is where it's gonna go, he shows plot plan of the property, where it's gonna lay out.
well,
what it's gonna
that's
produce.
all fine, and then he comes and he shows us that
That's not
stuff.
what this says.
But what if he doesn't have that? What if he says, oh, my brother-in-law's done that 1,000 times, he's gonna do it for me?
Wendy, would you let the record reflect that I lost my bet, that Mr. Leffertilia did arrive? before
Ah,
we finished?
Hi, Harry.
Was it a good bet?
We are all rich now, even richer in spirit.
Do you have another copy of these for Harry? I gave his away.
Released it to the.
No, Gary, you should have it, you're in the audience.
Well,
Do you have another one? You can sing along with Rich then.
May I ask? My apologies to everyone, naturally. I was unavoidable. May I ask what we're doing?
We were discussing your resignation.
Everything.
Will that be immediate? Can I go get dinner now?
No!
We were
Silence.
discussing the solar bylaw and how it,
How
Poses
restrictive,
restrictions on it.
right, how
Whether-
restrictive it should be.
Yeah.
How do we feel about that?
I understand.
And we're referring to a letter from Copeland and Page that says, here are the limitations of what restrictions you can lay down. And
It's basically the same limitation we have in, I want to say medical marijuana. And there's one other thing, when we were at that conference in Worcester, that they came up with, one site plan review, that we had to allow it.
Yeah, this is a 40A exemption, isn't it? Am I reading
That's
the right
section
one?
3, yes.
Yeah, oh, okay, I better put these on.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Bob, hold them up a little higher. Memorandum.
What we were discussing, Harry, is if you go into our, the bylaw, what we would be putting a resident through would make it unaffordable for anyone to do.
And my apologies again. I thought that the last time we had this continuation going, we were of the mind that we were doing essentially three things. One would be the large-scale commercial solar or wind, which is the big money thing where someone is creating energy with the express purpose of selling it. Then there was, stepping down from that, there would be the on-site generation, somewhere where you'd use probably about 67% of your energy, and any excess that you did not use in your business, you would sell. And then stepping down from that, the stereotypical residential installation. Have we moved beyond that?
no, that, we're really talking specifically about that third
Well, the rule
Piece.
for residential.
Residential?
residential.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Tilly brought up the question of whether it would be appropriate to put a limitation into the bylaws as to whether people could put a solar array in their front yard. And it raised the larger question of, well, what kinds of restrictions can we appropriately place on these ground mounted?
On a ground-based
Ground-
versus a
a
roof
roof
mount.
Right, and now we've been reading from this memo from Copeland and Page
From 2011?
from 2011, which indicates or implies pretty strongly that we can't do much in terms of limiting it unless there's what, safety, general welfare.
Except where necessary to protect the public health, safety, or welfare.
Right. And we're kind of mulling, and Chris has been playing devil's advocate to really look at how do we protect the town from being sued for being overly restrictive.
Well, it's a balancing of the,
Capriciously.
yeah, balancing of the equities, you know,
Mhm.
keeping the town out of lawsuits and having people be comfortable that someone's not going to destroy,
Yeah, set fire to the neighborhood or.
yeah, their neighborhood. It's a very, very tough call. I mean, this is America. You buy property. We encourage solar generation of power. There are all kinds of grants for people to do it. And you write a regulation that, you know, only the rich can do it. I think that defeats the entire purpose of it.
You know, if you want a PE to put a stamp on something, you better shell out $500, and it's
Yeah.
not gonna happen. But
Even
it's
more,
something
and
like most
it
bases.
requires a PE stamp and then an electrician's diagram.
Are we talking about the bylaw as it's been modified? and-
Yes,
and-
yes.
And I haven't seen this yet. I'm sorry if it went out by email or something. Did it go out by email?
No, we just got it. We just got it.
Okay.
But the thing is about the money part, when you're involved with zoning, that's the last thing you think about. The applicant will tell you that, usually. Yeah, geez, that's way expensive. So your answer mine would be, well, can you think of an alternative way that's cheaper? Bring it up to us, and we'll decide that's sufficient.
Right.
But money is never involved with my decision.
It's not the central.
It's
issue.
not that's right. It's not the central thing.
That's in
if-
zoning.
But you will.
This is zoning.
Yeah, but that's an exception to zoning. This is standard zoning, there's a difference.
But there is
You're talking
any
about the
zoning. Any
the
zoning.
Appeals board.
The appeals board, this is a special permit.
Right
That's
there.
zoning. A site approval is required.
Well, we're deciding should it be or not.
Yeah.
Well, can I
I'm
ask where
saying
we
it
are
shouldn't be.
on that? I mean,
Georgetown.
when we talk about the large-scale commercial facility, is there any question that we would need at a very minimum site plan approval?
Oh, no.
Right.
absolutely
What about,
not.
There is one question that I have about that, and that's the sale of excess power. Because my recollection was, I don't recall his name.
If anything,
The new light.
any power goes back on the grid, Dave Schofield is gonna have.
But we don't put it on the
But,
grid.
but,
It doesn't go on the grid, it goes back to Georgetown.
right, to
And-
Georgetown's
and they're
local
serving
network,
area.
local
He still
grid.
needs to have
The
an
grid-
agreement in place with
No, it
anybody.
actually goes back to the grid, that was his problem.
That was the problem.
That he has
not
to
a-
buy, he has to buy 80% of his power from already signed deals.
Contracts, right.
And
But that's
if
a
it's a
technical
really
problem.
sunny day and.
There's al-
But-
there is-
But that's up to him to approve
right,
or
that's a
disapprove.
technical
Right, we
problem.
don't-
They need to be able to
Right,
buffer
we
that
can say
energy.
it's okay from our perspective, and then he has to say it's okay from his.
Yeah, exactly, and I
That-
mean,
that's
we
a
need to have.
dual-
But that
that's
needs
a
to be
parallel.
explicit, that,
Ensure that, and we're, again, we're talking about large-scale production
Right,
facility
right,
where
right.
the intent is every electron goes out.
That's their sole
Right.
purpose is
That
to
is their
generate
sole
and
purpose.
sell.
Okay, let's focus on that. Let's focus on
Well,
that.
that's
And
not where we're at.
Without reading this, maybe we can get this to Howard and
Well,
he can do what he's gotta
But
do.
I have to
we're
tell
already
you,
down in the residential.
For,
Oh, you've already resolved that?
No, we're down in the residential.
For a
We're
large
That's
starting,
what we've been
okay, we're
talking
starting
about.
small, working our way up.
I
Great,
don't have a
thank you.
problem, I don't have a problem with, for a large-scale manufacturer, if you will, of electricity to have to go through these steps. That's a cost of doing business.
Right.
But when you get to a resident and you ask them to produce all this,
May I ask what
I mean,
steps we're
short
talking
of
about?
David Surface
Yeah,
and those people in
page-
his income bracket
Um,
won't be able
page
to
8,
afford it.
Well, these were followed by the state's
We
recommendation.
don't have another copy here
For
somewhere?
a bylaw.
I gave it to Gary.
So what you're saying is that you object to the state's way of doing this bylaw?
I think the
Because all
state
of
may
this
be in
is fo-
violation of state law.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not gonna comment. But
I think I could successfully argue that making a resident go through all those steps is exclusionary
if
to a
a,
homeowner.
if a resident is gonna put in a new overhead lamp in his bathroom, he has to go through certain steps. If he is gonna put in a solar array to produce power that might make his meter spin backwards, he's gotta go through certain steps as well. Now,
I'm not saying there aren't steps he's gotta go through. I'm saying that that list is unreasonable.
May I ask a
A plan
question?
stamped by a professional engineer?
I don't know how we got on this.
May I ask?
I don't know how to get out of it.
Are we talking about, someone picks up the phone and wants to install, have installed by a professional,
I'm trying to find.
solar panels on his or her roof?
No,
What are we referring to?
installing solar panels on the ground.
Okay, so can I ask, is a roof under these, Howard, and you've got a better.
A roof is excluded from this.
If
Any
I,
roof, a garage roof, a shed roof?
But not everybody has a roof that has south-facing unobstructed.
I completely understand. I'm trying to get to the gradations where we're imposing,
Nothing in this section shall be construed to prevent the installation of accessory roof-mounted solar voltaic installations on residential structures.
okay. So it sounds
Garage,
like
roof.
I can pick up the phone, call a solar installer, and as long as I put it on my roof, I'm okay. Does this board feel as though I need to bring, what amounts to site plan standard drawings
To that,
to
No.
this board, or a special permit granted?
for roof?
I don't feel that
Well,
way.
No, absolutely not.
Just ask one question about that. Instead of him calling a licensed professional to do this, what if he calls his cousin Vinny to do it?
He's gonna
Okay.
invest the money, it's his house. You know,
He's
he
gotta have all the
acts-
electrical
He acts at
installed.
his peril, and he
He's
still has to
still-
get,
at
still has to
this
get by
point,
the
Bernie,
electrical
he needs to
inspector.
get a building permit.
Yeah,
Okay.
and he's gotta get an electrical permit.
I think
as
we're
well.
getting
He's
off
tapping
the
it.
mark here. Let's
Well,
focus.
No, well, the only reason why I asked was,
Let- you gotta
you
focus.
said,
I missed a
in.
lot of the beginning. Why are we getting on?
Because the issue to me is, like I'm gonna repeat what I said
My
before,
apologies that you have to.
is that money and cost is not anything that we are concerned with. And for zoning or subdivisions, anything that comes through the permitting process, that's the last thing that you're considering. The applicant will come forward and say, gee, that's a heck of a lot of money, whatever. And I would say to them, can you come up with an alternative that's cheaper? If you do, bring it forward and we'll discuss it. If it's the same thing or comparable to what we have, we can vote on it.
Tilly, I just remembered what the case was at the Worcester
the conference, yeah.
conference that we went to. Do you remember they mentioned Harvard wanted to build a dormitory on a
Yes.
site,
Yeah.
but the city wanted a parking lot?
Mm-hmm.
And they made it so hard and so costly for Harvard to put that dormitory on that site
Yeah.
that the city lost the case.
Because they unreasonably regulated.
Yeah. That's
They
unreasonable.
That's right.
Unreasonably.
They unreasonably regulated.
Right.
Right.
And what I'm saying, playing the devil's advocate, is this list, if we're gonna hold a resident for
Okay.
residential use of a solar ground-mounted array, if
Okay.
you will,
So a
is-
ground-mounted array.
is unreasonably restrictive because of the cost we're making them go through.
Well, then, wouldn't that be because you're not granting them waivers from it?
But Howard, it's not the fact that you grant them the waiver, it's that your
Yes, it
criteria.
is. You got this
Read
criteria.
the statute. The statute says.
I heard the statute 3 times already. What's written in here says that the planning board can give the applicant the right to request a waiver from it. Unreasonable restriction would be if the planning board says, we're not gonna give you that waiver.
So you'll buy me dinner when the AG kicks this out and says it's unreasonably
I
restricted.
was just about to point out that I'm sure that in certain cases, I think the AG might vet this. And I always hate it when we bring a bylaw to town meeting that the town meeting voters approve, and then the Attorney General guts it on us. We should have at least enough wherewithal not to go over that line, hopefully. Sometimes it's unavoidable and we don't expect it, but it does happen.
Well, all of our bylaws go to Copeland and Page before they get to the warrant, before they get to town meeting. And if they slip up on something, they should be on top of it if the Attorney General says no to anything that we do. They're supposed to. That's what we pay them to do.
In a perfect world, that would happen every time.
So, it's not that we're just arbitrarily throwing out a bylaw.
Right.
We're
Well,
going through the steps.
I'm sure it would be a great idea once we close this hearing, once we come up with the language that we're comfortable with recommending to town meeting, that naturally we'd vet it through to, town council and get their
And honestly,
Pearls
where
of
the
wisdom.
state has, this is like a pilot bylaw that we received, and this is from that. So the state has already approved it, and Copeland and Page will just say, have the same thing and say, hey, They already said this is their example.
There's the difference between this bylaw in the states was the state was done a lot more by nameplate capacity, or the kilowatts being generated by the facility. In conversations with the municipal light department, it was more for the idea of it being broken down by use, wholesale, commercial, or the residential. And he said to him there wasn't much of a difference between residential and commercial because the use is going to be basically the same on-site consumption.
Wiring. It's not a difference for wiring,
Just the voltage,
technically
the
speaking.
amount of voltage, that's the difference.
Right, but to him,
Yeah.
Right.
it can generate 10,000 kilowatts and they'll be
Right.
consuming all of it.
I think what we have to look at from a zoning perspective is, Bob, if I lived next door to you, and I did whatever I had to do to put up solar panels on my roof, would you find that a nuisance?
This is ground.
Right, you wouldn't find that a nuisance. But,
Only insofar as if the sun reflected off
watch where I'm
the,
going.
Yeah, a nuisance is a different story
Well,
altogether.
well, isn't that the whole idea behind zoning?
Yeah, but this list under 7A, tell me how
I don't
that
have
is
one.
going to, tell me how that affects a nuisance.
Well, my understanding is
Doesn't.
that what we're looking at here is the installation plan. This would be something that would be presented to a special permitting granting authority.
Yeah.
And that that special permit granting authority would ensure through all of these that it is not a nuisance. Setbacks are appropriate, things such as that.
I can win that lawsuit
Do
with
we,
two notes.
well, I want to ask you this. At what point would it become offensive to have someone have a ground-mounted solar array? Is it,
Is the word
something the
nuisance
size of
anywhere in
that
here?
table?
I didn't, it is?
Is it somewhere, is it that size of that table?
No.
Bigger than my car? Well, that's where we have to go. Think about this. You're looking over the fence, and your next door neighbor has a ground-mounted solar array. At what point would you say, what the hell did that ever get permitted? That's where you have to think about this from.
Well, at what point do you look over your fence, and as Tim mentioned earlier, you see the 26-year-old mobile home camper that's been sitting out there that is now rusted off the frame, and the fenders are now on the ground, like your house. No.
Wish I had
And
one.
the,
I'd
and
restore it.
and the barn with the collapsed roof,
Yeah,
it's a
the
safety
barn.
hazard for your children that play it, go in there to play.
You know, when he mentioned, the fellow that was here before, Steve, he mentioned my kids playing ball. Well, my kids always played ball on the front lawn. Now, if the guy next door had all these panels out, I'd be always out there, or they would be, if the ball hit their panels and broke them up.
Oh.
I mean, there'd be constant, you know,
Somebody broke my panel.
you'd be creating,
The 2020 version of the
so
broken
my
window.
kids couldn't play on the front lawn
But
anymore.
they can certainly play in the front lawn, but you have no right, so you're telling me I can hit golf balls, and if they land on my neighbor's backyard?
don't tell him that I live too close to him.
If you shoot off the golf balls from where you are, and the guy next door has solar panels on the edge of his parking lot there, and you hit that,
Whoever hit the golf ball is responsible for the damage it does.
well, sure, but you know,
I think that's civil. That's a civil case. The
Yeah.
question more is probably.
But I'm saying how.
But I'm talking about the constitutionality of telling people what you can do on your property and what you cannot do on your property.
That's part of zoning
And the
from day
reasonable-
one.
Zoning has to be reasonable. That's what chapter 48
That's what it has
says.
to be
And
reasonable.
I think that's what we're arguing about
That's what
right
we're trying to
now.
find, isn't that?
Right.
Isn't that where
Exactly.
what we're trying to find, that
Right.
level there where
The
that
analogy
size
of
solar
playing baseball
panel.
on your front lawn doesn't cut it with me, because I just think that's unfair to someone who wants to do something else on their property. That because
Well, is it fair that I have to tell my children that they can't play on the
What if they
front
put up
lawn?
what if they put a greenhouse up? It's, you know, the same kind of
exactly,
thing.
if the
It's
ball
the
goes
same
through
kind
a
of
window
thing.
in the house,
That re-
Then
If
they
that
got,
greenhouse was put up,
you have insurance?
it would have to
maybe
be
it'll
set
cover
back
it.
from the property line.
Bingo.
so doesn't this.
Right.
That's what
Okay.
this what says in the general provisions.
Okay, so we're getting there.
Right, so my point is, as long as it does conform to the setbacks, we shouldn't have a whole lot to say about it.
So you think it should be by right?
I think so.
in the same fashion that the roof mounted should be on by right.
I think
Didn't we
so.
say that
No,
this,
but-
this says it's by right?
But by right doesn't mean you can just go in and put it wherever you want.
No, you need you need to go to the building inspector and get a building permit to do it.
Right, and it's
Naturally,
it's
that's
defined in here too. As of right siding shall mean that development may proceed without the need for a special permit, variance, amendment, waiver, or other discretionary approval. As of right development may be subject to site plan approval to determine conformance with local zoning ordinances or bylaws. Projects cannot be
May?
prohibited. But
Where
can be-
are you? I'm sorry, Howard.
And definitions on the second page. We're on the solar.
Definitions. Page 2.
Projects cannot be prohibited but can be reasonably regulated by the building inspector and permit granting authority as designated by local ordinance or bylaw. So,
I think you set the limit at,
You've got to have that, excuse me for interrupting, but where's the local ordinance and bylaw that says what the building inspectors can
Yeah.
approve and what has to go before the PGA?
I think the.
and do you want to do that according to the scale of it or the use or how many panels they're gonna
How
be?
can you
Yeah,
have
the output,
a bylaw
the output of the
that says
panels.
this man can make a decision, or it goes to this board?
It says end.
And it's basically everything that is not roof mounted, it's either on-site or a wholesale, needs to go through a site plan approval process. And to Harry's point, if someone puts in panels in their backyard, in here it states that there's a requirement that it be screened so it doesn't impact your neighbor's property. And if you don't want that, then it very easily could be someone could put something up and you could see it from your backyard.
Well, so
But you
what?
can show that it's screened so not as to impact your neighbor's property,
Right.
without going through all those expensive
You
steps.
don't have to go through all of them. You don't. You
I
can come
don't
in
see
here
it.
and say, this is what we wanna put up. We don't wanna have to provide all these other requirements that you're stating. They still have to do electrical drawings. They still have to, are you gonna allow something to be erected on the
Without seeing
ground?
where it's sited, yeah, I don't have any problem with what you got.
And in here, it's under the general provisions, setback requirements, visual impact, utility connections.
May I ask, and see, this is the difference here. I'm wondering, I mean, I don't think anybody has a problem drawing this clear distinction between the commercial facility that creates power to sell power, and the industrial facility that creates power to use on site and sell. I think.
Right,
I think
but we
those
gotta
are special
maintain some
permit.
continuity of terms, because in the bylaws,
Okay.
it's commercial and it's ground mounted or on-site consumption. So,
And so we need a third category, a residential.
well, residential is the same as on-site if it's gonna be on the ground.
Right, but I just don't think that the average homeowner should have to have a permitting process that's as onerous as an industrial facility that wishes to do that.
Exactly.
It's not a question of cost at all. It's a question of dissuading a residential homeowner from doing this because they're being put through the same
And
permitting
it
process.
allows the planning board as the permit granting authority to say, you don't need to give us this information.
Seeing that I haven't turned the chair over to you yet, Gary would like to say something.
Perhaps, I think Harry was on the right track about the size of it, and perhaps you need to go by the generation of electricity that's expected out of the units.
That's what I was
And
saying.
that would,
That's what I
that would
tried to
give you
say.
a size, I think, you know, if
One
it's-
caveat to that, and I was thinking along those lines, but I've gone a little bit beyond that. Today, a certain panel of X size can produce, let's say, 15 watts. Tomorrow, 15 watts will be produced with something this big.
So you define it by watts.
So you define it by the same way you define
it
a
by
s-
kilowatt hours. And if you're, like,
So in other
two
words,
separate
if
metrics.
10 years from now, if the number we
It'll only
put
get
down.
smaller.
Right, so in other words, I might have a solar panel this big that'll need permit.
The same
And then-
permitting
and then-
as this one does today. I think that there are two
And then
issues.
it- and then
One is the
you
wattage and
amend
one
the
is the
bylaw.
visual impact.
Visual impact.
And they're separate issues.
We do swimming pools. The difference between having the need for a fence around a swimming pool is by square footage. Perhaps square footage is the way that you would want to look at this.
Oh, no.
It's the height.
Any
The
pool,
original
any
draft-
in-ground pool in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts
Needs a
has
fence.
to have at least
Above ground.
above ground.
This is
Even
ground mounted.
3
This is
feet?
ground mounted.
I
Just
think
like
3
ground-mounted
feet is
pool.
the dimension for above ground that you need a fence.
I think it's square footage. It's the area of the surface. The
So
surface
if,
footage.
It's
in
the
the
depth of
draft,
it.
it was originally stated that anything 60 kilowatts or under would not be part of a reviewing process. But now what you're doing is you're allowing somebody to put something on the ground that's 60 kilowatt size without any regulation about if it's in the setbacks or out of the setbacks.
No, it has
Oh,
to
no,
be
it has
within
to
the
be within the
setbacks.
But to put a kilowatt,
It
Exactly.
has to be.
It's a
it has to
structure.
be- It has to conform to zoning.
Oh, we define it as a structure. It is a structure, so it
Right.
must be inside the setback.
Just because it doesn't have a roof
Time
doesn't
out.
mean
I'm
it's not
going
a
to-
structure.
Sorry. I
without
apologize.
Our
objection.
bylaws state structure as having a roof.
Well, then we change that for this.
Mm,
So-
no.
We say it's within the setbacks.
Anyhow, so
A
if you
wall
want to
could be
go
a
back
structure.
to the argument and discussion right now is about a residential installation on the ground.
Let me ask
And
you a
it
question.
was 60 kilowatt hours.
I'm gonna defeat your argument on the roof.
I'm not arguing
If I
anything,
put up
I'm
a
trying to make
sign-
my point.
if I
and
put
they
up a
keep getting
sign-
interrupted.
If I put up a sign in the town of Georgetown, like the one in front of the shopping center, you're telling me that's not a structure? They don't need a building permit to put that up? Yeah, they do.
This
We're
is
going to
a
argue structures now, or are we going to stay on the topic?
I will
Don't tell me
stay
that
on the
it-
topic
Well,
because
perhaps-
this is, let me read structure. Anything constructed or erected,
Yeah.
the use of which requires location on the ground or attachment to something located on the ground except a boundary wall or fence.
It's a structure.
Does the, when you said roof, is that your state regulation?
We're getting so off topic, so, okay, that's what a structure, they're going to be structures.
I think we're honing in on it because I think what we're doing is we're trying to find out at what level does the hapless homeowner that just wants to go a little green, what hoops are we making them jump through?
But,
When you
and
s-
you said it much better than I said it. The hoops that we're making them jump through.
When you say 60 kilowatt hours is a measure of power over a given
All
amount
the
of
time,
time.
I know.
So is that per month, per week, per day, per year? If you say it's in,
Like my
if you say,
basement for a
if
day.
you say that's in some regulation you've read, that's, it must go on to define more appropriately and more thoroughly what that
Again,
means.
I still believe that
The maximum rated output of electrical power production of the system in direct current, that's the rated nameplate capacity. And previously, it
60
stated a
kilowatts, not
60
kilowatt
kilowatt
hours.
nameplate rated capacity.
Okay, so that's 60 kilowatts.
Right.
It's not kilowatt hours. Kilowatt hours is a measure of energy consumed.
But I-
60 kilowatts is how much energy it's producing in any given instant.
my concern is that that 60 kilowatts today might take a solar array that would cover the floor of this room. Tomorrow, in years to come, I should say, it might just be the size of that table. And you're locking into an output number that really has no correlation to the impact that I think zoning is trying to moderate.
But we can't.
Again, if
Can-
I have something that's that big, the size of that table,
Can I,
But it isn't.
Can-
We can
can-
only work on today what size it is. We can't, when
I
it
agree
gets
with
to
you,
be a
Tony. It's gonna
table,
be in today's terms.
Can I bring
Well,
this,
it's-
well,
that's,
I don't,
you have to
I
make
don't
an
know.
adjustment.
Right, but what I'm saying is 60
Imagine-
kilowatts is not that size today,
No.
maybe it is, I don't know.
But let's, you know,
Does it say?
Could we get back to what is in this document and the kinds of changes we want to make to it? Well, I mean, that's why we're here.
Sorry, I don't know what's in it, I haven't
Okay.
seen it yet.
All right. Well, one of the things that we're hacking away at is this section 7 of paragraph 8 on page 5. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is the area that you're considering to be onerous for the homeowner. What changes can we make to this?
why does that at all have to pertain to a homeowner?
It doesn't. You can write a sentence in it that states a homeowner proposing a 60
Except for-
kilowatt facility or smaller shall not be restricted, or B shall not apply to them. You can write that in at the end.
Or except for
I-
residential use.
How are they
I
going to
like that
demonstrate?
idea as long as you change it from 60 kilowatts to something that is a square
Nameplate capacity
footage.
of 60.
Square footage.
I
So,
just-
so
I
that
just
they
don't
only
agree
have to,
with
if I
that
can
because-
just finish my thought, so that all they would have to do is to go to the building inspector.
Right.
And he would ensure that all things, other things being equal, that they were operating within the constraints of the town zoning rules.
But if you're going to send,
Dimensional.
Dimensional,
Right.
citing that the quality of the electrical connections and that the work is sufficient.
Right.
That,
It's
so,
not being placed in a setback and things like that as well. Right.
right.
I don't see that as being a workable solution because if the applicant has to come for a site approval, you're saying they don't?
Well, that's a good question. I
Do
mean,
we
they do, but they
require
don't.
site approval for sheds that are 13 by 13 square?
10 by 10.
No, do we require, I'm going somewhere with that, I know what you're saying, but we don't.
But this isn't a shed. To me, this is a lot of way over my
Well-
head when
well,
you get to kilowatts and knowing all of this.
I don't know what you're seeing in
And
your mind.
quite frankly, I think I would need, as a volunteer on this board, I would need all of this material, and then I don't want the applicant to come to us for a site approval and then go to the building inspector and find out he's gonna need all this, and then say, why didn't the planning board tell us this?
Well, the
That's-
point is, at a certain.
I think that's what we're
at a
kind of trying to
certain
stand up.
threshold, you would only go, as a homeowner, you would only go to the building inspector. In the same way that if I wanted to put an addition on my house, I don't have to come to this board. I go to the building inspector and I show him plans.
Maybe
That's
we
how
can
that
ask the
works.
KMP their opinion on this question.
Well,
I
Because
think
I
that-
hate
I
to
think
go
that-
through all this process and find out we
But Tilly,
don't
I
have
think
to.
the core of the concern is that this is new technology. This isn't just a shed.
I know.
This is pretty significant technology.
Sure.
But I don't think that there's anything really particularly that's putting anybody at risk, except insofar as they can electrocute themselves.
That's important.
Well,
But-
that's
but-
That's their,
But that's a building inspector's
the electrical
purview,
inspector.
electrical inspector. But is that within our jurisdiction?
No, Gary wants a question here. He was raising
Gary?
his hand.
I'm looking
sure
at
yet.
this, as like Chris is saying, how much this is gonna cost with the engineers and this and that, okay? I wanna put in a good sized system. I've checked with the building department recently, and state law now allows you to build a shed, they increased the square footage. A shed of 12 by 16 feet, which is a good sized shed, would fit into that square footage. So instead of going through all of this, I put up 3 sheds, 12 by 16, with a roof pointing the way I want. See you later. Nobody can say nothing.
Yep.
So,
Right.
so I can beat your system,
I
so
know.
why not make the system, like you're saying, something that the average homeowner can work with, instead of a stamped
It'd be a
engineer.
heck of a lot easier for the average homeowner to maintain his system on the ground than on the top of his shed that he had to build so that he didn't have to come before us. I firmly believe
I think it's a
that
good point.
we need to, I don't know if we need to get I'll get a tape out of my truck if I have to, but figure out how big it is. That's your threshold.
I think we have to, the way I would determine that is the average power consumption in a house, a high end, would be 2,000 kilowatt hours a month.
You're
If you're using that much
hung up,
power, you're,
Want to see my
you're really,
you're hung
You're not
up, you're
using
hung up on the kilowatts again
right, but that will translate to
today.
current day photovoltaic panel size.
Right,
Tomorrow, it gets smaller, not bigger,
right.
and maybe we amend it
But
tomorrow.
is your
today-
average homeowner going to take up 3/4 of their yard to do something like this?
It's up to
Well,
them.
there you
It
go.
is.
If they wanna do that, that's up to them.
Like your house can only,
But you should be
Ah.
allowed to generate your own electricity.
like your home can only occupy a certain percentage of your lot, that the solar array can only occupy a
Right, you can
certain
o- right.
percentage,
No,
not
that's
more than
perfect.
a certain percentage
Right.
of
That-
the available open space on that,
No, you could, right, and
on that lot, subject to setbacks.
I love discussions like
right, you've got the garage,
I
the
live for
shed, the
these.
house, all of that is considered like occupied square footage.
Exactly.
And there is, whatever the limit is, I don't know what it is, but it's defined how much you can cover in
Is that
the lot.
contiguous building area or something like that?
I,
No,
whatever it
No.
is.
it's,
But-
it,
No?
the building can only
Tim,
occupy.
finish. Let
But you
people
could just
finish
say
it first.
whatever area that panel takes up, or multiple panels take up, gets added to that space, and as long as it still falls within, you're not exceeding the number of square feet or percentage of your lot that you can cover with structure, being whatever that structure
I
is.
like the
So
direction.
you're saying I can't build a house that goes.
Covers more than a certain percentage, or you covers more than a certain percentage of the area of your lot, yeah.
No,
I'm not saying
I
that,
can't.
but-
No,
CBA,
a
that's
building.
continuous building area, that's
Yeah.
in
I
your
don't know what
bylaws.
it's called, but
I'll
it's.
build it, I can't
CBA.
build right up to my,
Setback.
Setback,
Like
absolutely
setback?
not.
No, you
No.
can't.
No.
No, there is a percentage of
That's,
land
Hmm.
that you can cover on your lot,
oh, okay.
beyond which you have to go to the ZBA and then let them deal with it.
right.
So as long as it falls within that,
Mhm.
as long as the area that you, now you can argue with
So
the
now we're not
area,
setting a-
is the area, is it a vertical drop down from, because it's always angled? I mean, you could get into that argument. I don't know, maybe we don't, maybe we just count that area as it is what it is and whatever angle it's facing, I don't know.
I'd like to make a motion that we find out from Copeland and Page if that's a possibility that we can eliminate it. I have a feeling that we can't. This is all controlled
What-
through the state. And they give us this bylaw as an example. And I don't think we can arbitrarily say a resident can go without coming to us. I don't think you can do that. Just go to the building inspector
I
and
think you can.
well, let's find out,
It's called an
okay?
allowed use.
Can I make a motion in that way? To have, Howard find out
You're
from
chair of the
KP?
meetings.
You can make it, this is America, you can make a motion, is it second?
Okay.
Can I ask what, I'd like to second it, but I need to know what the motion is. What is the question?
The question is if a resident who wants to install this, solar power would not have to come to the town, planning board for a site approval. They can go directly to the building inspector and we would never see it.
Let me
Are
tell
you
you what his
saying,
answers
can
are.
we make this as right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right, well, is that the
Would
question?
bylaws do that?
designed as
Well,
of
I only
right
want
now.
this part of the question, that he finds that out, okay? You can create your own questions. But I think that before we go further and waste our time on
So you're
this,
saying, can a resident install a solar facility on their property, not roof mounted, 1 square inch or 100 square yards?
right,
Can they do it without going, regardless of size?
yeah,
Can they install that
Yeah,
without coming to the planning board?
right.
And I say the answer is yes, or should be if it's not.
Well, are you willing to support finding out?
Sure, I'll second that, sure. Howard's got nothing else to do all day.
Any discussion?
So just to clarify, is
It's a simple question,
Does-
simple answer.
is the implication of that we don't need a bylaw?
Yeah.
No, the bylaw kicks in beyond, if you go beyond.
But I think what council, if I may, gentlemen, I think what council's gonna come back and say is, you have to have a bylaw. You want a bylaw. Right now, anybody can do anything. If they started this morning, they don't have to go see anyone. They just go do it, unless it's considered a structure, which under that definition it is. They go to the building inspector, who's gonna say, yep, it's a structure.
Yeah.
Your setback's right, that's right, your real estate coverage ratio, your land coverage ratio, you're within the limits.
I think that's 25%.
Be that as it may.
I think you're correct.
Would,
And then he's gonna say, go ahead.
and
Then, before you make any electrical connections, the electrical inspector inspects it.
I think if,
Because you don't need permission from Georgetown Municipal to co-generate.
You do to sell it back to them.
There's a state law that says if you spin that meter backwards, they have to pay you. There is an exception for municipalities.
He begged to differ. Were you here that night when he was
So
there?
he could differ all he
Well,
wants.
that
I
would be
ran
the
Department
question
of
I'd
Public
want
Utilities.
KFC to answer.
Right, but
That
that's
would be
not
the
up
question
to
for
us.
Kate.
That's up to, if he wants to tie into a live electrical grid, I'm sure he has to get permission.
He has to
from
go
the
by their
electrical
standards.
inspector. And
He
the
has to go by their
electrical
standards.
inspector isn't gonna say, yeah, I don't care, go for it. Not, he's gonna be held to what Georgetown Electric says. And the guy's got a good point. If you got 80% of your, if you're committed to buy 80% of your power from a particular supplier, and all of a sudden 70%, you know, people
Still
start
have to-
generating 30%.
You still have to pay
that
for it.
You still have to
You
pay
still
for
have
it.
to
So
pay
they
for
get,
it.
I mean, we all get screwed when that happens. It's not just the electric department.
I don't understand what you're saying.
Well, the town of Georgetown has, out of, if they have to buy 100 kilowatt hours, they're under contractual obligations for 80 of those. And he has the right to shop around for the other 20 kilowatt hours.
Right, which can be from
And if residential generation, if somebody puts something on the roof, he establishes an agreement of, you can give me the power and this is how much I'm gonna pay for it. And he has to be able to monitor that, because if he gets beyond, if he's now faced with 110 kilowatts and he's forced to buy that power, he's, it's just like a real estate, stock
Well, it's a
market,
binding
you're
agreement.
selling long and he's gonna start generating losses.
Right, well, it's a binding agreement. I mean, if the town of Georgetown uses 3 million kilowatt hours of
It doesn't matter if
energy
somebody
in
puts the
a month,
facility on the ground or on the roof.
Well,
They
it's
have to
time
connect.
for the Georgetown Municipal Electric to get with the 21st
That's
century.
another issue.
that's a whole nother issue.
That's
And one of
another
the things that
issue.
he talked
I
about,
don't know
we don't
how
have
we
the
can-
technology to do it, and the grid doesn't have the technology to do it.
Absolutely
They do not. They do not, Chris.
They
He
absolutely
spent
do.
an hour here saying they do not.
Well, I've spent more than an hour with the director of ISO, which controls all of the grid, and they absolutely do. They just haven't signed the agreement to get on the grid.
Perhaps what we need to focus on is,
That's not really our problem.
No,
the
of course
zones.
not. Why are we trying
That's
to regulate
their-
it then?
That's their problem.
Let whoever wants to generate whatever they want on their own property.
Because you're gonna have a Saugus or you're gonna have a Boston. This is a residential bedroom community.
And I'm saying,
You
a
could-
resident,
let me finish.
Tilly, a resident should be able to generate what the resident wants on his property.
in a perfect world, but it isn't. What
If
could
they
happen?
Let me finish.
I started it.
If they have no place to resell it,
I'm not the
that's
chair
their
right now.
business.
I'm not even there with selling or buying it. I'm talking about the appearance on a residential lot. In the future, if this is a viable, as you're saying, a resource for the community people, the residents, you could have a farm all over everybody's front
You're
yard.
not listening to what we're saying.
But that's why you have
What
regulations.
we said was,
So hold on a minute. Let me finish. That's why you have regulations, is that you want to protect the value of the property of the taxpayer. So that's why the state says you can have regulations, but it cannot be unreasonable.
You said zoning has nothing to do with money.
No, it doesn't,
No,
but
you
you
said
guys
it
are
does.
bringing it in.
but
But
Tilly,
it either does or it doesn't. You're saying.
Well,
that
I'm
zoning-
saying that say I'm saying that as you guys are talking, you're concerned about that it is a saving. If it is so much of a saving, is it not possible that everybody on the street will have it? Everybody everywhere will have it on their front lawn.
That's-
Do we want a community of panels on the front lawns?
I don't care, personally.
It doesn't bother you.
Doesn't bother me.
Not in the slightest.
and if somebody pays
It's
300,
environmentally friendly.
if somebody pays $350,000.
I can't win.
Well, you asked me a simple question, I gave you a simple answer. It doesn't
May
bother
I, Tilly, now, may I speak?
Oh, you
Anyone
guys
have a
are
problem?
something else.
What we were discussing was on the percentage of land coverage. That gives you a restriction on the amount of area.
But that's a lot. I was trying to find that for you to
But we
explain.
can put the restriction that it cannot occupy more than, other than what the existing buildings, it cannot occupy more than another percentage
Of what the existing buildings are taking up.
Exactly, what,
They do
the
that,
leftover
that's
property,
reasonable.
you know, the remaining property.
All
Or
right.
based on if you've got 4,000 or 5,000 square feet of buildings on the property, you can't have more than, say, 1,000 square, whatever you define it as. So it doesn't dwarf the property.
Not in the
The
residential
rest of the
zone. There is
property.
no CBA in the maximum lot coverage.
There isn't.
There isn't
I can
anything
put
in
up
the
a house
in the
all
residential.
the way to my
Yeah,
lot
there is.
line.
When I
It's
built,
CB, commercial, has
I'm sorry.
65%.
I'm sorry,
No,
when I
no,
built my
there's
house, I had to
definitely-
do the calculations with Mr. Brett.
There definitely is.
And my engineers, they had so much of the 2 acres could be occupied by a structure with a
Well,
roof. And
It used to be like 15%, and it got bumped up to 20 or 25%.
yeah, no, you cannot build a building. I could not build an 88,000 square foot building on my property.
On your 88,000 square foot
Well,
lot.
this is the current book, and I don't see where you had a restriction at all.
Well, let me ask this, if I may.
That's use, that's not building.
Whoever told you that was off the mark.
Tilly, I'm telling you.
Well,
Could ask
I
the-
agree. I understand what you're saying.
He would know.
I'm not saying that you're lying.
Let's ask the building inspector.
Do that.
We're borrowing.
Another job for Howard.
Do that.
Am I hearing you right in saying that the size of the ground mounted, by right, ground mounted array should be a percentage of the size of the footprint of your house?
No, the footprint of the remaining property in which the house does not occupy cannot exceed a certain.
Outside of the setback,
Oh,
Right.
restricted to
within the setback.
Within the
within the setbacks and any other restrictions that apply.
And
This is
any
getting
other,
quite complicated.
any other structures on the property?
I think you really wanna know
I-
the square footage.
Yeah, I kinda like, the more
Getting
we
better with the square
debate
footage.
this, the more I'm starting to think Harry's onto something about just saying limited to 40 square feet or 100 square feet or 200, whatever, of panel.
Why
And
is that?
then going beyond that would then require
Would
A
that
special
require a special.
Right, we're not saying you
Don't
can't
have a
do it,
problem
we're
with it.
saying if you're under a certain amount of square foot, go for it.
Let the building inspector handle it.
Right, get
It's
through the
pretty-
building inspector, the electrical, the town electric department, and you're on your own.
Till we deal
In a
with
perfect world today,
I probably do.
how many square feet of panels do you need to run the average sized house in Georgetown? I
I don't think you run any houses. I don't think you do. I think you just run a house.
When I put mine up, it's gonna run my house.
Well, you better go see it.
If you
10,000 square feet of roof.
it was the goal from the beginning to make this as of right. Are you talking now you want to do this all special permit?
No, we're
To
saying
make
if,
what as of right? I'm sorry, Howard, I'm not.
The ability to put in a solar energy facility on your property. Because I just heard back there that if it's not gonna be a residential, everything else is gonna be through special permit.
If it's not by right, it's special permit.
Right, but the bylaw for the solar energy facility is written so to be as of right. As a permit granting authority being the planning board.
If it's as of right, then what do you need a permit granting authority for? I lost you, I'm sorry, but.
It's if as of right, you still can go through a site plan approval process. I read that
it's not
section.
as of right,
I-
because
yeah.
we
Yeah,
say
no, it is, as of right, if it's not as of right, it's special permit.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That's
Go
why,
ahead.
that's why I read in the beginning of it.
Okay, well, I haven't, unfortunately.
So I just want to clarify that, because if you're gonna start thinking that this bylaw is gonna be special permit, then you might as well stop talking about it, because it's all written to be as of right with the planning board as a permit granting authority, not as a special permit
But
granting
how
authority.
is it as of right if they have to get approval from us?
Because
It's non-discretionary. It has to be non-discretionary site approval.
I don't get it, it's as of right if you just go to
Well,
the
that's a
building
good question.
inspector.
but if it's as of right, doesn't mean you're allowed to go do it. It's a misleading term.
Okay.
I'll read the definition, and it's even written up in the DOR.
Yeah.
As of right siting shall mean that development may proceed without the need for a special permit, variance, amendment, or other discretionary approval. As of right development may be
Where are you,
subject,
Howard? I'm sorry.
under definitions, page
May
2.
be subject to, you were
Site
saying.
plan approval to determine conformance with local zoning ordinances or bylaws.
So what may be subject to,
Yeah.
I don't get that, it's not as of right if it's subject to having to come to us and get approval.
Well, according to
It's not
what
as
the
of
rest
right.
of
It is
As
as
of
of
right
right.
means I wanna do it.
No, as of right means you don't need to go get a variance
Oh, so
or a
as of
special
right.
permit. As of
Or
right,
special permit.
Or discretionary.
It says it may be subject to non-discretionary site plan review to
I'm
determine
reading the wind
conformance.
bylaw here.
as of right means you can put it in the residential property, but you're gonna be subject to setbacks.
Okay, so
Right.
I was fine with that from the beginning.
Okay. So if
Is
you,
that the only, is that the only reason they'd have to come before the zoning board would be as if they weren't complying with setbacks, right?
right.
No, if,
And so what makes them come to us?
Well, no, we could cover that,
What defines them needing to come to us?
that it's not gonna
all
be a
special
nuisance.
permits, they have to come to us.
What is it?
No,
Be a special
even if it's a
permit.
site plan, they need to come to you.
But a site plan
Well-
review, it's a different standard for site plan review.
Exactly.
Yes.
That was my problem when I saw, by email, the chart that you had. He had the chart, if you remember, he had all Ps right across
As permitted use.
as a permitted use. But if you're going to require a site plan approval,
It's not, just because you're requiring a site plan doesn't mean it's a special
you
permit.
need, no, but you're gonna need another code there, because a permit means nothing, you don't need a,
Tilly,
Anything.
if I may, this might help, that as of right, the only issues before us would be as to whether something has to be done to protect the public health, safety, or welfare. And I still think in here it needs to be that it's not gonna create a nuisance.
And that's in here.
Define a nuisance.
Oh,
Well,
there's books and books upon what's nuisance.
But didn't you say that
Building inspector
So he makes the call.
would make.
I thought that the
No,
P,
but the
there
nuisance
should be
would be-
another letter that requires just a site
It's gonna
approval.
reflect.
If
P, a
there's no-
permitted use, O, an excluded or prohibited use. A is authorized by special permit by Board of Appeals. D is a use authorized by special permit granted by the planning
I
board.
think, like, wind
E
turbines.
is a use authorized by special permit by the Board of
Doesn't
Selectmen.
matter. But
So we
solar
need another
panels,
letter,
they're
I
driven
think,
by
for
solar
just
panels,
site
they
approval
shield
requirement.
themselves from the reflection off
No,
the
if it's
back.
And
if
no
it's
one-
just site approval, it's a permitted use.
No,
You're
it
coming in
isn't.
for site.
It isn't though. It isn't.
Julie, I don't know how this board's been operating for all these years.
This is new
If you're
to
now
us.
saying there's a category that needs to just state site plan requirement.
When you come and
Right,
look at the
but those are
board, at this
majority of what's out there.
intensity of use,
You gotta look
if
at
it's a
what's out
P,
there now and-
all you do is go to the building inspector.
No.
Yes, you ask him,
Okay.
ask him.
Well, the ones that are a matter of right, and I almost call you Mr. Chairman.
Well, I am Mr. Chairman, but I'm just not chairing the meeting
Okay,
because
but
you haven't chaired it all.
Go to roll pretty quick, I don't like that.
Well, I'm having too much fun, I think I'll leave.
I think
I think you're doing a great job. I'm ready to go home and watch this on TV.
in the matter of, under the matter of right, the threshold only has to be, or should be, that, there's nothing, it doesn't violate any issues in the protection of public health, safety, and welfare.
Or it's
May-
more
may-
setbacks.
May I ask a
Oh,
question?
no, everything has to be, I'm not talking about, I agree, that's a given. It's gotta go through all the setbacks, it's gotta pass muster on all the setbacks and any
And land area coverage,
land area coverage.
which may or may not exist depending on who you listen to.
Which may be
Every building
incredibly
code
difficult to
has
find.
to deal with.
But it's
Very
either
good.
defined or it's
Find
not.
what you guys are
And
talking
mine
about,
is
but it's
either
not
defined or
here.
May I ask a question, and maybe this is because I came in late to the game here. Are we saying that if, for a commercial facility, that commercial facility, essentially,
You gotta jump through the hoops.
under this, it's by right, they have every right in the world to walk in here and do this, and all we can do
We're
is,
talking residential.
Finish your
Strictly
sentence.
residential.
well,
No, according to the chart, it's right across the board, anybody.
If you're a commercial facility over on Colton Drive
yep,
and you want to put on the ground
a ton of them,
a
a whole bunch of them,
quarter acre,
whatever, yeah. Whatever you wanna do,
you're allowed to put that up if you get site plan approval.
with just the site plan approval. And that's a non-discretionary site plan approval.
The planning board's gonna look at
Planning
the
board cannot
facility.
disapprove it.
Is
But
it
if we write-
protected from other properties? Is there screening? Is it not in the setback and so forth?
But if we write the bylaw and it differentiates between residential, commercial,
Mhm.
commercial/industrial, and wholesale cogeneration, if you will. And we designate that residential is, as of right, subject to these conditions.
Mhm.
Commercial, subject to these conditions, not as of right, but commercial
Special permit?
with a special permit,
Ah, okay.
subject to these conditions and
Can I see
criteria
that
that have to be met.
Which you,
And a whole new set of criteria that has to be met for wholesale cogeneration.
I see I see the large-scale production facility for sale, for outside sale, as
Mhm.
special permit.
Yes, no problem with me there.
I see the industrial on-site generation for on-site use, which may create excess. I see that as special permit as well. It's not roof mounted. And I see residential as by right with a limitation. Definitely by right with a roof mount, but with a ground mounted by right, but it has to be under a certain square footage.
I would say like 10% of the lot area.
Yeah, I think it, I
But you
don't
can't,
know.
you can't say the same for RC as RA.
Yeah, well, see, that's the whole thing.
So
Roll
you just
with
say
the
lot
percentage.
area,
I think I still,
or available lot area,
yeah,
unused currently.
I'm just locked in, I think, to that square
Well,
footage.
you know, I'll throw another monkey,
Go ahead.
another wrench.
Another wrench?
Another wrench in it.
I think gears mashing already.
10 o'clock, I'm
Let's
going
say-
home.
Let's say a
That's it.
developer comes into town, and he wants to do a development, a green development, and lays all of the houses out in a very nice pattern, and in the middle has a solar farm. That all of those houses share in that generation.
Well, I'd say if he can sell the houses for good money, it must not be too bad. An idea.
No, but I mean, are we gonna create something that now,
No. If he wants to do that, then he can sell the houses. and
That would have to be owned by a
profit.
homeowners association, which would essentially
Absolutely.
be, yeah,
It's a
that's a
development.
commercial facility.
Yeah.
That's large scale production. Well, I don't know.
I don't think it is.
Yeah, it isn't. It's that.
do you divide it by the number of residences that are using it? And if they use
Well,
it all,
the
is it
pro-
residential?
The problem is this. Somewhere, at some point, we're gonna have to hit the use table. Okay? And residential is gonna have to have, a P for a permitted, or it's gonna have to have, whatever it is. The industrial, things that are in the industrial zone, we're gonna have to, I believe, put a D there that says special permit for a site.
I don't know.
Do you think it should be?
I think if we can do it as a homeowner, they can do it as a business owner.
I disagree, respectfully.
If it's wholesale power generation, just to resell in the market, that's different. If you're creating a solar farm,
Mhm.
you're creating a business.
Right.
Businesses have to jump through hoops to
Right.
be able to do that,
Right.
so should they. But if you're like Richie's Woodworking with his turbine there in the industrial park in Newburyport, if you're using most of your generated power to power your milling, whatever he
Whatever
does
your-
in there,
your
his
industry
woodworking
happens to be.
machines,
Yeah.
I don't think you should have to jump through any hoops, really.
I think,
I think it's different if you're gonna do it for profit, to resell versus if you're gonna use, let's say your business uses 10,000 kilowatt hours in a year, and the windmill or the solar farm you're putting up is gonna produce 10,000 or less.
Let's focus just on solar, because there are
Okay,
other
yeah,
wind
right.
issues.
Right,
And
right, but
if we use that as an example, just with solar, I agree. With wind, I'm not so sure, because I think that there are other impacts.
that
with
just
wind.
comes to mind with me
Mhm.
because that's the only industry I know that actually, I work right down the street from him, and he claims that it basically pays his electric.
I
what if I
wonder
have a
if-
fledgling
That's okay.
industrial business, and I wanna lower my costs, but I also realize that if it's by right, I just so happen to have a lot of land, and gee, you know what, I can maybe just put up a ton of solar panels.
Let's see your
And
utility,
produce more.
let's see your electric bills.
Okay,
There's a
so
case
now we're-
on-
Now we're a copper.
There is a case on point.
It is.
At that conference, do you remember they said the farmer
Yeah.
put up the solar that he said was just going to be to run his farm?
Yeah.
But there was enough to run the town,
Yeah.
and they said, no, sorry.
Well, in Newbury, off
It
of
doesn't
at
happen.
Scotland Road, that farm guy wanted to put in a solar array, and he was shot down by the selectmen. It's under appeal currently. But there's a farmer, it's his land.
Yeah.
He was doing that as a wholesale. His goal was not to consume the electric generation on site, but rather sell it off.
Right, but his argument was if he can't do that, he's gonna sell it and they're gonna put houses in there. And go in the marsh anyway.
But
An
the
industrial-
problem with the problem with Georgetown is that we have so many residences right up close to where businesses. You know, it's always been a problem. It's been a sore spot for this town zoning. And it's tough when people are so close living to businesses, you know, Tenny Street, the one on Jewett Street. I mean, you got homes all around it. And I think, you know, to just let him go and put whatever he wants for whatever reason it may
Can you
be.
write in the bylaw that within a certain number of feet from a residence, commercial or industrial, has to have a special permit?
Well, the bylaw ties into the other bylaws that require the 100-foot setback from residential area and so forth.
Right, there's none of the nearby residential neighbors care.
Yeah, so that would take Martel Way, a project like Martel Way, which is all industrial, out of that loop.
Out of it? No special permit there at all?
It's all commercial.
No, I'm talking about out of the loop of not allowing it near any residences.
Residents, yeah.
It's industrial.
It's an industrial zone.
In-
Are we still talking about an industrial, if you're,
We're talking about commercial and
if you're
industrial.
commercial
For their
facility,
own purpose.
for using on your own, then
Yeah.
you should be by right? You saying that?
And you could put one of the restrictions by right unless you fall within so many feet of a residence, of a residential, yeah, of a residence.
How do you determine that without site plan approval?
Very easy.
Assessors map,
You go in for a building permit,
yeah, the building inspector.
and the building inspector's gonna say you're,
I can drive a truck through that. I'm still gonna fall for the idea that that's special permit. Ben, I'm one person
I know.
on that. You
I'm
guys,
not trying to
I'll
analyze
defer to
what
the-
you've said, that's why I'm saying.
I'll defer to the wisdom of the board.
I,
The person I feel worse for and really feel bad for is Howard, because he's gotta figure out a way to write this all up.
I think if you get
Right.
into a bylaw that states both special permit and permit granting authorities, it's gonna get confusing. So,
What do you mean, that says, gets into special?
because we're talking about
They have to
designating the
figure it out.
planning board in this instance as permit granting authority, and in this instance, it's gonna be special permit.
When you start to get into logic trees in order to figure out who has to do what, except on alternate Thursdays,
Yeah.
it gets really gets dicey.
I can also, just to change the subject a little bit, like, the historical commission is trying to protect certain areas for historical purposes. Now, if the residents there are allowed to have these solar panels in their front yard, back again to the front yard, and visually seen from the street, you've lost that historical appearance.
But historical, they have their own rules and regulations.
right, they have to
You
go
can't
before the
paint the
historic
historical
district, that's
building.
not us.
Without
That's not
permission.
us. We don't have a historic.
No.
Yes, but I'm saying that they would have to follow the zoning. It would be an overlay kind of a thing, I guess. Either ours would be overlay or theirs would be overlay. But it would be, you know, you would have, if in fact it was voted and approved that residents can put it wherever they like without any process of regulation. And they did do that, say on Elm Street, I'm thinking of Elm Street. And a resident decided he wanted to do it, and I think the historical commission would come in with many stricter regulations for that area.
They have no regulations.
But they will eventually, I would think right now they don't.
Oh, okay.
Right now, they're just establishing the district as far as I
Trying
can
to
remember.
establish. Right.
The different districts is. And that's the character of the town, and I hope they're successful at it. But to me, it would change the whole character of that street if we just allowed anybody to do whatever they want because it's a residential district.
It's their land.
I would say we could do anything we want if it was a municipal building. That's a different story. Like we're planning on putting solar panels on the roof of the new school in Pembroke. That's different, you know, even as well as the wind power.
Tilly, if I can just interject, I've got to come down on with Tim on this, that people have got to be given the license to make certain stupid decisions about their property. I mean, we can all walk around this town and say that property is worth less now than it was 10 years ago because of what we see there. If we're too restrictive about historical qualities, they wouldn't put electricity in this building.
There wouldn't be wires in the street.
Exactly. And this is a brave new world that we're entering into with regenerative power. And I believe me, I think it's a very complicated issue because environmentally it makes tremendous sense to encourage this. And I think Koppelman and Page uses the term in the heading of the bylaw, of this proposed bylaw. It's to promote it. But there have to be some reasonable and rational limitations. But where does the bar end? That's why I like the idea of leveraging the maximum square footage on a piece of property.
That's a hairy slash too.
Well, that's not a bad discussion. Should it just be larger than a certain amount, or should it be a percentage of that open land?
I think it should be, I like the percentage of the open land.
I do too. Because if somebody has a great big lot, and we say you can put a postage stamp up, well, that could be construed a unreasonable limitation.
Right. Well,
And it could be a small percentage, it could be 10%. That way, 90% of what was open and not built,
10% of a 2-acre lot
that's a lot of power.
8,000 square.
That's a lot of power.
But
And then it's up to them. Then
8,000 squares, 80 foot by 100, right?
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's one
8,000.
dimension.
80 foot by 100.
Do you want to know how many permutations and combinations there are?
No, but I
Well,
mean,
I'm
that's,
trying to think the easiest.
No,
one.
yeah.
It's
no,
pretty much
to
rectangular.
visualize it,
100
yeah.
by 80, yeah.
No,
That's pretty big.
yeah, well, then make it 5%. Make it different in the different zones.
I'm thinking
that's the
more
answer
like-
to it.
That's not a
What
bad
will
idea.
a
But the different
commercial,
zones regulate that because the house lots in some zones are 5,000 square feet. The house lots in other zones are
40,000.
40,000
Yeah.
square feet.
Another
You know what the
80.
best way to do would be is to limit it to the size of the house. That way, if somebody was gonna put solar arrays on their roof, it would only be half their house, because it's only gonna be the south-facing part of the roof. So that gives people, say, I don't wanna have it on my roof, I wanna put it in my front yard, or my backyard, or my side yard.
Or they may not have a south-facing, I don't have a
South-facing
south-facing
roof,
roof.
right.
Mine is this
So
one.
they should have the option, and maybe we say the whole roof area, whatever, I don't know, have it proportional to the area of the.
I think what I'm thinking more is a day when someone's gonna be able to put a relatively high-powered solar system, bring it in on a truck, offload it, unfold it, and it's there. It's on a slab. And it gets delivered on the back of like that.
Can that be done next Tuesday?
Not before 8 o'clock.
Go ahead,
Because
you have a good point.
that not standard, because there isn't a standard, but that commercial, I open a catalog or go online and I order this, and this comes and gets delivered to my house. That type of an installation is where I sort of see this going, where someone would have that one truck that comes in, it unloads. they work
And
on
what's
it,
your concern
erect it.
about that?
My concern about that is that we're not saying that you can't do that. You can't pick up that phone and have that done. That we're making this
We're only saying you can't.
special permit, that we're making this incredibly
What-
onerous.
what
If
we're-
you stay under the threshold.
That's
What-
right.
What's that threshold?
If you
The
can't
size
get
of your
one,
roof.
well, if you
Okay.
can't get,
Is it the size of your roof?
The size of your roof.
if you can't get one delivered in the truck
Mhm.
that's of an appropriate size, well, maybe you shouldn't get one in the truck. You gotta try another strategy. But one of the implications of what you mentioned, Chris, is that this is, can I get it next Tuesday? Well, no, but maybe a week from Tuesday, because this is a very rapidly evolving technology. And if we try, it has to be fluid, but we can't get too hung up on that. This is not gonna be a 100-year solution. This is gonna be revisited. When those panels are shrunk by 90%, a lot of new questions are gonna be raised about reselling this back into the
Well,
grid.
but that's not,
about
we're not looking at reselling.
no,
We're
no,
just
no.
looking
I
at-
no, no. I'm. What I'm saying is that
It's only gonna get
As it-
smaller in area.
and more powerful, exactly, and so a lot more power is going to be generated in a relatively smaller area. What's that juice going to? Where's that juice going to go?
Well, that's not.
And in
that's
your
the-
well, and in your example, what about the developer who wants to plop the solar array down in the middle and distribute it among the ownership
Well,
group?
that wasn't my example, but
Well,
what about that
It
example?
was Chris's example. I think it's a good thing to consider, even if it's not gonna be something that's gonna happen today. Do we wanna solve that problem?
Why is it a problem if the guy can sell the houses and the people don't mind looking out at the solar?
Well, is
array?
it- is
Why
it-
a
is it-
problem?
Is there a scale
Does it-
issue?
Well, it doesn't exceed the roof area of the houses that it serves. Or half the roof area.
Well,
You
yeah.
can only put solar array on the south half of your roof.
Are
So
there
you've only got
electrical,
half, it's only a.
are there electrical issues though that have to do with that?
We don't, we're not electrical, we're not utility guys.
I think it's
They gotta deal
structural
with-
that
Yeah,
you
we're
would have to be
physical.
concerned with,
We're physical.
if it can hold the weight.
Well, that's not,
Gary.
that's not our concern.
Does not, the idea of what you're trying to get at is that a homeowner could generate enough electricity for his own use. So if in the future that gets smaller, if he generated more than he can use, I think that somebody's gonna know that. Probably the electrical inspector, the building inspector of the town.
Well, the electric.
And there should be, if he can't get, let's say, repaid for it, because the town perhaps says we don't have to buy it back, you've got the right to generate what you need, then what's the sense of him spending the money?
Well, that's a
The
judgment
town
call
will
on
be
his
buying
part.
it back. Oh, we'll be paying
Yeah,
for
but
it
the
in lawsuits.
idea of it was that the idea of it was to go green, and I thought mainly for your own facility. And that's what, is somewhat what you're talking about with the commercial, the difference between them selling it or them generating enough for themselves. Now granted, at times, they may not be using it and it may be getting sold back, but somewhere they gotta prove they're using a certain amount of electricity. And if they're way over that, just like you said with the farmer, then they get shot down. But I think there's gonna be things built into it. And if in the future, like you say, they get smaller, what's to prevent someone from having a power plant there? It's
Exactly.
probably the fact that
They
That's
won't
not
put a
the
power
idea,
plant
but
in if
the
they don't have
idea
a
of
market
what-
for the power.
the idea,
Right.
the idea of what you're creating is a for-use type of energy, for use at his home. And now he wouldn't be within that regulation because he's selling 3 times what he actually needs.
He's
But
only
he
gonna
already
sell
has
it
a
if
permit.
the electric company's gonna buy it.
He already has his permit.
Yeah, but you're talking about in the future that these things are smaller and the square footage doesn't
Right.
need. So when he gets his permit now, you somehow build in an amount of electricity
Well,
into
that's-
it. You
that's-
figure the amount that, and I'm sure someone's got what an average homeowner uses, and you can possibly go by that. One of the reasons I liked your square footage with the house was, a larger house is probably gonna need a little more. someone who builds a smaller house. So if you can somehow build it off the square footage of the house, that could perhaps retain it to the use.
But that would be, Gary, don't you think that would be a business decision of the homeowner?
A financial
Well,
decision.
I
Financial
guess, I
decision.
thought the idea though was that you're putting this in to be green and for use of your home, not to be a
I
generating power.
understand that, but today, in today's world, that house may need
Yes.
5,000, let's say 4,000 square feet of panel. And if they do what we're thinking they're gonna do with the panels, is make them smaller and more powerful,
They'll have to reapply for a new permit to change them.
Why?
no, I don't think.
I don't have
mean,
to apply for a permit to change.
So-
Well, he's already got the permit to put the solar panels
Okay.
up, but it's
I change them one by
It's
one.
up to him what to do with that excess power.
Well, not if
But
the
you're,
electric company.
you're looking,
Because if the electric company won't buy it, he might as well let all his neighbors plug in.
but you're looking strictly at square footage, Chris. You've also, I think, gotta look at energy use and energy consumed. Okay, and if in the future, the panels are smaller, he's gonna have to apply for another permit
I kind of think we're
Change
getting
out
ahead
his-
of
to
ourselves.
change out his panels.
At what point does Uncle Sam get out of your life? If you will, if I could use that analogy. How much is the
When you're
government
not-
gonna
When
regulate?
when it gets to the point that perhaps you don't need the Georgetown Electric Company anymore, and you are generating it all on your own.
But the problem is you can't.
It gets
because
cloudy,
the-
it's nighttime,
You
the sun
can't,
goes
right,
down.
you can't store it.
Yeah, this, we're talking,
Periods
these
of low
panels are only gonna
generation.
generate electricity for immediate use with the systems that I've seen that are going in now, only during daylight hours. At night, you're using,
There's different, you have got it handled with the solar and the photovoltaic. Where I work, they've got a small photovoltaic farm. It's probably about the length of this room and it's
On their
wide
roof?
as-
Is it on their
wide.
roof?
No, it's out up back on the hill. I have
Is that over
to,
by-
I have to keep the area trimmed out and everything.
is that in Beverly by the hospital?
No, that's over in Ipswich.
Is it the hospital, over near
There's
the hospital in
it's
Beverly?
at the Sisters of Notre Dame. There's also a turbine up on the hill.
Back
They're
on the
very-
hill, I
they're
can
very
see
green.
it, back. I definitely agree with back.
Well, yeah, because
Backyard. I don't agree with
It's a
front.
19-acre facility, you know,
Yeah.
it's basically a farm.
Having your
I
backyard
don't-
backs up to.
Beverly runs the high school on all solar power.
No, it doesn't, it backs up
Mostly-
to,
mostly solar.
Yours
But
doesn't.
that's,
yeah.
Mine
It's,
doesn't.
The
it's an
thing is-
interesting dilemma.
yeah, but, and I think we're getting ahead of ourselves in terms of what our concern is. If we try to build regulations for 20 years from now,
Perspective, we can't do it
we
perspective.
can't do it. We can't do it. And so I do think we need to keep it simple, and I think this,
Should we do it like that?
not that good. I like keeping it simple. And by making it a percentage, if there needs to be something in that algorithm that changes, it can be
Change
changed.
the percentage.
Change the percentage.
What are we talking, a percentage of, a percentage of what?
Roof area.
Of
Maybe.
buildable area? Roof
That's
area?
that's one
I
option,
think roof
one
area, because
possibility.
then you sort of make it equal. If somebody doesn't have the option to put it on the roof, because it doesn't face
Would
in the right
equalize it.
direction, but
Some
put it
big
on the
roofs
ground.
out there.
No, but if the roof house isn't sited so that it has a south-facing dimension, plane.
Well, it's not 80,000, it's not 8,000 square feet like you were saying as your example of
Well,
the.
for 10% of a.
No, it's half the roof, because you can only put the panels on half the roof, you can't put it on the whole roof, because the roof faces in two different directions. So you just take half your roof area, and that's what you can put on the ground somewhere if you'd like.
Gives me a quarter of an acre.
Well, most, you referred to my property, most of my lawn is
Not
in
yours
the,
personally.
is in the south. That's where a good deal of my land is. In the back, there isn't that much room for, I'm sure, just for myself, I probably could find one with a few panels on the side. But there again, it would have to be something that, once you put that in, you're restricted on what you could put there from then on. It's there and
The thing is, not every property really is ideal for,
Conducive for-
mine is not conducive.
got trees-
I'm on the north side, slope of a hill. My house, the spine of the house runs north-south, so I've got east and west facing. There, I got no place to put solar.
But
It
don't
doesn't
you-
make sense for me.
Don't you think, if it was though, that by putting it in the bylaw to put it in the back, that someone can come and say, I can't put it in my back because I'm very limited. I got a pool there, I got a barn there, there's no room for it. Then he would have a recourse to say, I need a waiver for this.
To
And
put it where?
we should have something written that could justify him doing that.
I think you can put it in the back, the front, the side. Put it
I-
on the roof, put it anywhere
I-
you want.
I
but
don't
you
go
should-
for that.
I think limiting it by what you can put on your roof and.
It's gonna change the character of the town, and you're not gonna have any control
No, most
whatsoever.
people don't have the money to spend to do that anyway.
Yeah, but you can't think about it.
But I
Tilly,
think eventually
the
it's
character of the
gonna,
world is changing.
yeah.
Not really, because we've seen the examples of these bylaws from different towns, and they're not really that different.
But you're saying the character, it's gonna change the character of the town.
Right.
Georgetown kind of stay in the dark ages forever.
There used to be trains that ran right next to this
Why not?
building.
I think you can put.
Don't go
anywhere-
into that.
I mean, things evolve. The trains that used to run through the center of town, they don't run there
Look
anymore.
at all the stupid money we're spending on
I
school.
think you can put it anywhere, you should be able to put it anywhere in the ground in your yard, as long as it's under 144 square feet.
And from whence did 144 square feet come?
That's the sign.
12 by 12 by 12.
Yeah, but how do you know what?
The point is this, it's
What
a
size?
number. If, on the floor of town meeting, the people want that number to go up, then they make it go up.
So someone is
If they want
going
it to
to.
go down, they make it go
I
down.
think, I think you look at what a
And
solar.
I think it's a nice, easy fix
I like,
in the future if we need to
Hold on, you
modify.
I
can't
like-
go up
I
on
like-
town floor. You can go down, but you cannot go up.
10 by
I
14
like-
isn't doing.
They
I
can,
like-
they can modify that.
if I
You
may,
can't.
That's the
They can
rule.
modify.
That's all.
okay, I'm gonna play Tim now. If, I like Tim's idea because it actually equalizes it. The most anybody could put, no matter where your house sits, is 50% of your roof.
That's huge. This is big houses.
It could,
There is some use.
yeah.
I mean,
Good
you've
for
got
them if it's a
ranches that
big
have
house.
got more roof than
If
capes.
it's a big, if it's a big house, it's on a
Sorry.
big lot.
I'm not in favor of that.
On what basis?
It's an enormous amount.
So,
Now it's it's too much. It's too much.
on what basis? Why?
Visual appearance. Character.
That's it, that's
Character
it.
of the
That's
community.
where
Well,
I'm
they can put
at.
it
You want the
on- they
legal
can
one,
put
it's
it-
character of
They
the
can put it
community.
on their roof.
But
They
that's
could-
not in.
on the roof
Is
you
it
don't see
prettier
it.
on the roof?
On the roof, it's
On a
not
10-pitch
noticeable.
roof, you don't see it.
Well,
But we're,
On a
That's
6-pitch
what we
roof,
have
you
to,
don't see
that's
it.
you
the,
may.
Except
But
that
it's
we're
not-
point.
The only way
necessary,
you don't see it's on a
Chris?
flat pitch roof.
except where necessary to
It's not
protect
flat-pitch roofs.
public health, safety, or welfare. It doesn't say character of the community.
Character of the community.
The
is-
United
is ingrained
States-
in the welfare of the community.
zoning itself is character of the community. It's a given.
Welfare of the community is the character of
Anything
it.
in zoning.
And this is what this says, no zoning ordinance shall, except
Restrict it.
where necessary to protect the public health, safety, or welfare of, I'm sure if you had that carry on, it's the welfare of the people. The United States of America has decided in their infinite wisdom that this country needs to get off its dependency on that from which we generate our power. And they are ready to do anything and everything to get people to take advantage of it.
Right, that's
And
what the state
communities
is
have to
promoting.
adjust. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Communities have to adjust.
I have no problem with that, Chris. That's absolutely right. We do have to get
But you're saying,
alternative
yeah,
ways
we
of
need
energy.
solar power, but not on your front
But
lawn
not-
because we're a horse community.
Not at the expense of losing the character of this town. We don't want to let it go random. We wanna make it visually, and I think visually should be in here, that word,
I don't.
conducive to the neighborhood. It should be pointedly written there.
And I'd like to know, that's one thing I'd like to know from town council, if that can be included in a restriction. That's one thing.
All right.
So,
Can,
I would support that question.
Can you restrict it? I have no problem with that.
Right.
That it's
Under
not.
the site plan approval review criteria, it states, on page 8,
Yes, I know that visual is in there.
That's what we need. That's,
facilities shall be constructed and operated in a manner that minimizes adverse visual, safety, and environmental impacts.
right.
So if,
that's an undefinable thing.
It's
visual.
tough.
right, but so is neighborhood character.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
They're purposely vague.
So,
They're squishy for a
No,
reason.
neighborhood character is pretty easy to define, but
Community character.
but each neighborhood has its own character. And it's like, as they say in all the analogies, it's like pornography, you'll know it when you see it. And that's in many legal cases. You know it when you see it. If it's offensive visually, you'll know it when you see it. They're subjective tests, not objective tests.
We're calling it out right
This,
here.
this is a very sticky question. There are lots and lots of buildings in town that when I saw them built, I thought, boy, what a mess. But I got used to it. And they're okay now.
Can I make a motion?
You may.
Can I make a motion that we restrict, that we don't require coming before us for a solar array, ground mounted or otherwise, that's less than 50% of the area of the main domicile, the house roof.
Main structure?
The main structure's roof. Just gonna make that motion. It'll be in the minutes, it'll be referenceable.
It's the size of a bus.
We can make additional restrictions, but this is like, we gotta start somewhere.
Is that motion seconded for discussion purposes?
I'll second that for discussion purposes, sir.
Motion been made and seconded?
Could he repeat that, please?
I'm
Motion
making
that
a
we don't
motion
require.
that you would, a residential ground or otherwise roof mounted solar array, roof or ground mounted solar array would not have to come before the planning board for what a special permit.
Would not be a special permit.
Would not be a special permit to install on your property.
Did you
Yeah,
not give
keep
a
going.
percentage of
Under the-
size?
Oh, I'm sorry,
Under the-
under 50%,
Under 50%.
as long as it's under 50% of the area of the main
Existing
structure's
structure.
roof.
You mean a
And if
footprint?
you wanna make it 25%, make it 25%, just some percent.
As opposed-
Most solar arrays don't run the entire width of a roof. They run some percentage of, so, Chris is going, okay, well then let's leave it at 50.
12 for his roof.
Nobody will see mine.
It's
Just
only
the
the golfers, yeah.
We have to start somewhere with
I
something.
agree. And it's a good thing.
One of the things, well, I mean, we're not electrical engineers here, is we've got to make sure that it is, what we're proposing is kind of the Goldilocks solution. That it's not too big
Mhm,
and it's not too small.
mhm.
So that it's big enough to have an impact on the homeowner's electric bill.
Something the
Yeah,
homeowner
well-
would want to buy.
Right.
That would be,
That would
That would
produce
pay for itself.
80% or
Pay-
some
buy
percent,
itself
some
back over a period
substantial
of years.
percent.
I think
We
that's
can
the
make
state
that percentage
regulation that takes care of that
25%.
issue. We don't have any control over that.
No, the only reason why I'm mentioning it is that if we make it too small, then in effect, we make it economically useless. And we don't allow people, essentially,
Well,
to
bear in
do
mind,
it.
what
If
we're
we-
doing,
if we-
we're drawing a line, so to speak, that says, if you wanna go bigger, come for a special permit. But if you wanna stay under, you got it by right.
I think that
I think that's reasonable.
that sings to me.
But I think you're talking about school bus size stuff, and I didn't have that in mind. I was thinking pickup truck stuff size.
Well,
But again, I
pickup-
think that would really
pickup trucks
depend
carry
on
small
economic
loads.
feasibility.
The state went by 250, so what I can do at the next meeting.
250 square feet.
No, kilowatts, whatever the measurement was in here.
How many square foot of panel does it take? to
That's what I'm gonna
It
bring
changes
back for the.
daily.
Depends
Right,
on the
but-
sun.
But all we can do is go by today. I mean, maybe that and.
I can bring in a visual
I mean, you know,
example.
maybe it's
Some-
multiple things
something
that
that
trigger
might-
a site
Mhm.
plan review.
You might wanna keep in mind that makes that proposal even more palatable,
Oh, this,
is that in the not too distant future, like an order has been cut to National Grid, that so many of their customers have to generate a certain percentage of their electricity. Have you seen the?
No, they have to buy a certain percentage of their electricity from renewable sources.
Yeah.
That's why they bought into Cape Wind.
But they're also putting in solar panels at no cost to the residents.
Really?
Yes.
I'll sign up for that.
But we don't.
We have Georgetown Electric.
Georgetown Municipal Electric doesn't participate. They have been ordered to have 20% of their
Right.
customers pull off the grid in a certain period of time.
I think that's awesome.
And they have contracted with companies that go out and get a percentage of that which is saved from what they would pay. They install the panels, they wire them, they hook them up, the meters are put in, and poof, they're off and running. One day's work, a ranch in front of my parents' house in Saunders.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Of course, that's all I have. Now I have my father saying, how do I get mine? He hasn't noticed these 80-foot trees in front of his house.
Right, right.
But this house sits, it's like my house up on the hill. The sun rises and sets on the house.
Yeah, yeah. I used to live across the street at 295. So I know exactly how lovely that sun is
Yeah.
on that side. Yeah.
And, you know, by giving 50%, we're allowing somebody the maximum that they would have had they been able to put it on.
Right.
Right.
Because we're allowing the roof without.
And what restricts it is how much that person wants to spend on what they want. But it gives them the opportunity. It levels the playing ground.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It gives them the opportunity to have that amount that anyone else could have
Without going to the planning board for a
without
special
going to the
permit.
planning board and getting a special.
Which
So
I
if
think
someone-
is totally reasonable.
I do too. If someone has a smaller house, so that, but it's sited well, but it's not gonna
They're
generate
still
enough.
only gonna
And
get 50% of what they would have got on their roof anyway.
they can put it up on the roof without talking to us.
Right.
But what if they wanna put in another 50% down below?
Can't.
Why not? Because it's within that 50%.
Of
No.
course they can.
No.
Oh, you're
then-
saying it's
then we have
exclusive,
to add
it's
that.
either or, roof or?
Either or.
Why either or?
No. I'm not thinking that way.
I'm just thinking about that in terms of the smaller homeowner.
The small homeowner is gonna have less of, I'm thinking about my neighborhood. My roof, my house is
Mhm.
actually much bigger than my neighbor's.
Right.
The house next door, the community living house, is a small cape.
Mm-hmm.
he's gonna be restricted to half the size of his roof. It's a matter of economics also. You know, could they then put it out in their backyard if they wanted to? I suppose.
Well,
That's what I'm-
they can still come before us and ask if they can do that, if we make it exclusive.
But if we put in there that you cannot have a solar array that exceeds 50% of your roof area, whether it's on the roof or on the ground.
Oh, no, we weren't saying,
Then
we
that's
weren't talking
exclusive.
about that, because we could put up, why are we restricting people from using the whole area of the roof, south-facing roof?
Well, you're not, but
You're
your
saying, oh, you're
south-facing
saying,
roof is half
it's
your roof.
half the roof, okay.
Right. That's why we're just giving people that don't have a south-facing roof the option to use that area of half of their roof.
What if I wanna use my roof and use my front?
That's my question.
Well,
Well, yeah.
that's not addressed in this.
But I mean, why
Should it be?
restrict it?
It could be. Under
That
residential.
states that nothing on the roof is considered in the bylaw. So if you
Cool.
wanna take
Get a
that out.
gimme. You get a gimme on your roof.
But we could put in the
Then you do- then you
bylaw,
make
we
it
could put in the
exclusive.
bylaw that no residential array, whether it's roof or
Can
ground,
exceed 50%.
may exceed 50% of the square footage of the total square footage of the,
Without,
without a special permit.
According to this booklet here that we got, Clean Energy Results, when you got to public safety, including fires, it says here, the biggest potential risk associated with solar PV systems is the risk of shock or electrocution for firefighters and other emergency responders who could come in contact with high voltage conductors. A 2010 study on firefighter safety and emergency response for solar PV systems by the FPRF, based in Quincy, Mass, recommended steps firefighters can take when dealing with wiring and other components that may be energized. So perhaps we should be looking with the fire department to see if we are covering, or
But that's-
whatever you're going to do
That's a
to
function
make
of the
it.
building.
That's the electrical and.
and that's
yeah.
roof mounted stuff. You don't have
Probably.
fires in your front yard.
Right, yeah, but I would think that it wouldn't hurt for us to look at it, to see if our bylaw is contradicting anything.
Let's just build it, let's start with building blocks. Let's just start with my motion and either reject it, either vote for it or vote against it, and then more things could be piled on
And-
top of.
Well,
That's a
that,
great idea. You have to start somewhere.
We
Yeah.
just need, we need one building block. This is like
I-
just flake,
You
So-
don't wanna
so-
go
and
with
my
a hundred
question-
and 44 foot, huh?
no, that's too small. I've seen arrays a lot bigger than that.
And I think arrays bigger than that should be special.
Well, I don't,
Well, then you're talking the average ranch house.
no, 140 square feet is tiny.
I thought we were going by the kilowatts that it was produced.
144 square feet.
Isn't that
is
Well, but-
regulating the
Yeah,
size?
12 by 12.
No?
That's
It's going
tiny.
back and forth.
That's,
That's how we're regulating the size, is by the kilowatts.
That's 4
Well, we're
sheets of
not, though.
plywood.
No, we're
We're
not.
not electrical engineers.
we're
so
not
going
doing
down
it that
road.
way. And if
We're
we
just
wanna
gonna
do it that
limit the
way.
size because
I'll
that's
vote
what,
against
it's
it.
the view thing.
Well, you don't know how many panels you would need and what size they would be
We're not,
for one homeowner.
We're not
That's
talking about
we're
that.
not, that's up to the
We
building
know-
But
department.
we
you're
know-
saying 50% of a roof, and how do you know that's
I'm not
more
saying
than
50%
enough
of a roof.
or not enough?
We don't, other than the fact that I've seen
If it's,
areas that are much smaller than that on people's roofs that seem to be adequate for what they were looking for.
if
Don't
it's
you
more
think
than
we should know
enough,
how many
why
panels?
would someone want to put on there more than what they need?
To sell it.
You can, the
There's no one to buy it,
the
so.
50% comes from the fact that every roof, if it faces, one half faces north and one half faces south, best case scenario, the north face generates 0 power and the south face generates what it can. So all I'm saying is let the guy do on the ground what his neighbor can do in the air on his roof without coming before us. You wanna do more than that, you wanna put one up there and on the ground, then come talk to us.
I don't mean to complicate this, but, you know, if here's the roof,
It's not complicated enough.
if here's the roof, and we're at what, 40 degrees latitude, so the sun is gonna be up 40 degrees, it doesn't really necessarily mean that that's gonna get zero. And that's only if it's directly north
Nobody
and
puts it on
south.
their north roof.
It's, well, they could put it up here, or they could build it up a little bit.
But we're limiting it to 50% of the
Well,
roof, or come talk to us.
The idea of that, well, that's true. That's
It's
true.
your benchmark. Your benchmark.
This is just, this
It's
is,
a benchmark.
this is what you can do.
Over the
with-
50,
This is what you
come
can
and
do.
see us,
This is
get
what
your
you can
special
do without going through this.
Right.
If you wanna do more than that, go through this.
You gotta remember, you're adding something the size of half of someone's roof in the yard. You're saying you can do that by right.
If you have a 2,000 square foot house, which is probably average for Georgetown, there's some thousands, there's some 3,000s. 2,000, so you're saying 1,000 square feet is an average roof.
Not a big area.
That's 20 by 50.
Okay.
That's not a deal breaker in my eyes, in my head. 20 by
A
50
little bit
is
more
not
than the
bad.
average swimming pool.
It really
20
is
by
an
20
area.
is the average.
And you need, I mean, you know, if you really wanna make it pay for itself, maybe that's what you have to do. I don't know. Somebody's not gonna put one in that.
I just think 50%
Someone's not
is
gonna
a
put
very
some-
large.
That's
I
a
mean,
lot.
You're,
That
you're,
is a
you're,
lot.
you're taking a roof
Yeah,
off of someone, you're taking half a roof, everything you can see, and you put plunk in that in someone's yard, and you're saying that's a by right, and I
My
think.
pool is 20 by 40 and it takes up most of
There's
the
5
yard.
votes, you'll get one.
I
I'm
really
gonna
wish
call
you'd
the
lower that
question.
percentage, so.
You can make that
Well,
motion.
now,
I'm
now,
not
now,
gonna, I'm
hang,
not gonna,
You don't think 20% would be.
Are you
a
asking to
reasonable
amend the
number?
motion?
how about
I
40%?
sound like you don't.
No, I mean, you know,
How about
okay.
40%?
I'm thinking 20%, you're talking that 20% of that roof.
20 by 50 is not a huge array.
We gotta find, I'm back again, we gotta find out how many
20 by
panels is
50 is
needed
pretty
for one
big.
homeowner. You know,
This-
throwing out
20 by
numbers is not the
50
good way to
is
do this.
Pretty damn big.
But I'm really good with numbers.
I'm not
I
arguing
really
that you
don't.
Tilly,
are.
I'm pretty good with
Tilly,
like
that's just-
visualizing those numbers.
What,
And
what
that's
size
pretty
home are you
big.
talking about?
In
Whatever
someone's
the
front
homeowner
yard.
has.
Harry, on
But
a
a
2 acre
house-
lot in an RC zone, 80,000 square feet, we're talking 1,000 square feet. 1/80th. 1.25%. No,
Of the whole lot, but
That's pretty small.
you're not talking about lots now.
But we're not turning this property into a solar farm by allowing less than 2% of its area to be covered with a solar array.
What I can do for the
In the
meeting on the
downtown?
25th is go back and do some research about a 20 by 50 area, how much kilowatt
It's a
production
lot.
come out of that.
It's a lot.
And I can talk to see what type of permits people have been getting from the light department to put panels on the roof. Maybe we can see what the average residential need is.
I think
Right,
that's a
just
good,
be-
that's,
right.
And
because we could
That's
then,
great.
And then we
because we
can come
could
up
then
with an
back
understanding
into
of the
whether
average home.
50% is appropriate or 40%, 20%, I think.
There you go, that's a good idea, maybe that's what we need. Because it is getting to 10 o'clock, and I'll be honest with you, I'd really like to read this.
Alright, so noticing
That would be nice.
Noticing the time.
Not now.
I need that.
So do we,
Yeah,
can we let the
that's
motion
fine.
ride?
This,
Thank you.
Harry, whatever, can
Can we
we
let the motion ride? Let me think.
let the motion ride.
till the next meeting?
We can continue discussion on the
Can you
motion.
make it again?
No, we can continue discussion
No, I
on
don't
the
wanna
motion.
withdraw.
I think we can continue discussion on the motion. It's just like the state legislature, they don't vote on everything. We continue discussion on the motion.
For 5, 6, 7 years.
I don't think I'll remember it, that's the only thing, you know?
I will.
Wendy will.
We have minutes.
That's why I said.
So-
You have to get the wind. Oh my
So
goodness.
is there a?
Not
is there
tonight.
a motion- Is there a motion on the floor
Till the
to
next
continue
meeting.
discussion on this motion to the next meeting?
Yes, so I'll make that.
I'll second that.
Is it second? Discussion on the discussion.
I'd like to discuss that.
Well, it gives us all time.
Seeing
to
that,
think about
having
it.
no discussion,
I'm not.
all those in
I'm not-
favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Just postpone the question.
I don't have a
Motion to
problem,
adjourn.
Harry, with modifying the 50%.
We have to close this hearing?
We have to continue
Please
this hearing.
Continue the hearing?
I'll make a motion to continue the hearing. Howard, when is
25th.
25th.
I'm thinking, when is town meeting?
October 28th.
When do we have to have this done by?
Monday, coming.
Warrant closes on the 3rd. That one has to be posted, I think. Is that what we heard?
Do you need final wording?
I think-
No,
I think
just-
third, I thought was
You just need a
October.
placeholder, right?
right.
Just need a
Because-
placeholder.
There was one selectman at the meeting who, you could see his face get very red
Or what?
when they were talking about placeholders.
No, you can submit your, and then it gets revised.
Gary didn't like, he doesn't like
But
placeholders.
there was a day that it needed to be posted by, I thought that was, it had to be closed, I thought October 3rd was the day I remember.
Well, it's not before September 25th, anyway, so we can continue
Yeah.
discussing
We
this.
see, Harry, the reason the 50% is more amenable is what if you have a really small group and you wanna set it at 20%? Is that feasible? So Howard will find out.
Let's get some data.
What area, what's the watt density?
Yeah, because I think the
of
board
solar-
needs to start
current
getting a
solar
picture in their
panels?
head of what this represents.
Yeah, the question is, what's the watt density? How many watts per square foot or square inch?
Right.
See,
What is it that
you
solar
see it
panels
that
have?
way, and not to belabor it, but I see it as though what some people might consider offensive if they looked out their window and saw it in their neighbor's yard. And because it's a by right thing, it won't have the benefit of being, having us say, well, we need to put trees up to screen it, et cetera, et cetera.
All those, you drive around town and look at people's yards.
It's
I-
an interesting,
I understand.
it's very interesting, because people will always have the right to put 50% of the
And
so far.
And I think that's a pretty big thing that you can just drop in your yard like that.
No, I'm not, hear me out. What I'm saying is, it's an interesting concept that you have the right to use half your roof, but if you decide to go to the land, you can only use a certain percentage of that which you would have been able to use.
Right, so we're making it more restrictive if you don't go along with the 50%. We're making it more restrictive to put it on the ground, and it's equally visible, I don't care where you put it. Matter of
It's
fact,
an
it might be
interesting
more
concept.
offensive on a roof.
If I can interject, I thought you made a motion to take this discussion to the next meeting.
Yeah, we did, I know.
And you
I'm
closed the
not-
public
this
hearing.
is- I would like
You
to,
sound act like Nick.
I'd like to make a motion to continue to, what is it, 9/25/13?
Yeah.
I second that.
Motion's been made and seconded to continue the discussion on the first motion.
I think
Oh, we
we
did
already
that.
did that. This is to continue the hearing.
I'll continue the hearing, I'm
Right,
sorry,
yeah.
to continue the hearing to September 25th. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, aye.
Any opposed? Mr. Watts, did you move to adjourn?
I would love to move.
Everything done? You guys are great.
Did I hear moans over there?
This is the last item under the planning office.
Hazen Court and Rogers Way?
Yeah, and I was asked to prepare what a color graphic would look like before
Yeah.
changing the map.
Go ahead, Howard, you have 45 seconds.
And this is what it would look like. It would be the color of a town-accepted street, the name Jewett Street, and then the addresses. You'll notice here on what's referred to as Rogers Way, it's 112 through 114. It's not over here because there's actually an address between 67 and 79 that's over here. So that's why.
Well, all we have to show is what's in this funky section.
Right, it would be a sign that said Jewett Street. Underneath of that would have the street numbers.
Right.
And presumably there is no 67, 77, 79, or 112 or 114 on any other
There,
part
no, there aren't.
of the road.
Yeah,
Okay.
I looked at all our assessors' information.
Important to check.
Detail, right.
It's
just-
important to check.
So would it be the other 112?
right.
Oh, my goodness.
112 and a half.
And
Howard, how does that agree with what is actually on the ground there?
Actually on the ground, what do you mean?
Are those
I would
numbers?
think that is on the ground.
112 and 114
The extent of.
is
of-
Jewett
of
after the farm.
The alignment of the green represents accurately, but not precisely, the alignment of what's referred to as Hazen Court. And in terms of this section of Jewett Street, that's
That's the
fairly
section of
precise.
Okay.
Yeah, because this section has an odd little loop of pavement through it. But this whole
It
map
actually kinda
is
comes-
diagrammatic more than it is a.
It's
This-
diagrammatic, but we're.
This actually comes down like this and then jogs over this way. It's not just one, but you know.
No, but the
it's-
limit of the right of way is right here.
So we got people who are gonna be living on the corner of Jewett and Jewett. It's
It's
cool.
all right.
We got Spofford Road, Spofford Street, why not?
Why do you start? You're repeating yourself.
You do.
What's the wish of the board?
Yeah, could I just ask, technically, Howard, at this point, what do? We vote to modify the map?
Yes.
The planning board does that, and we don't need to go to town meeting for that, according to.
I'm just gonna confirm, according to KMP, it was an error.
Scrivener's error.
Scrivener's error. But I wanna confirm that we can add back Jewett Street in this, but adding the numbers back doesn't constitute a change enough to require a town meeting.
Okay.
That's all. I just wanna double check. I don't think it does, but I wanna double check.
So, do we need to vote on this tonight?
Yes.
And the vote would be that the
Motion
planning,
to amend the existing official town map.
To reflect the renaming of
To
Hazen Court.
yeah,
reflect the graphic shown,
To reflect the correction of the town map by deleting Hazen Court.
Hazen Court and Rogers Way aren't even on the map.
Or the roads commonly known as, or,
And it's still been, their addresses are still Jewett Street now,
Right.
right?
It on the
All we're doing is reflecting the map showing.
By
what the
designating
addresses
the
are.
area on the town map of 112 and 114 Jewett Street and 67 through 79R Jewett Street.
67, 77, 79 up, not the road.
But why do they have up there in 1797?
that's a map and parcel number. 17 dash
The
10.
95 is not showing there.
No, it's not. It doesn't on the official town map.
Why
This
not?
is right away
It's
area.
not one of our streets.
This is right away.
They don't pay
State.
taxes.
State road.
You
highway.
would think it would be identified on a map. So this piece here, 1797 and 22, 20-2, is that on Parish Road, 20-2?
Yeah, it's far.
That's fine.
This is Morehouse's property over here.
Right, but
That
this
would be
one here
Woodman's.
is Woodman's.
Yes.
Why is that number 20-2 and that's
those are just
17?
parcel numbers.
Tilly, wait a second. Those are map and lot parcel numbers.
This is census.
They're not
Those aren't
addresses.
They have nothing to do with the
They
address.
have nothing to do with the addresses.
All right, let's get back to the motion.
Can we just say the way it's represented on the graphic shown?
That sounds good.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that we amend the existing town map to reflect the correction, the official town map, to reflect the correction of that town map as represented by the graphic presented tonight.
And then you could say showing 67, 77.
Do you have an entitlement on this?
12, 114 Jewett Street.
Title in this graphic?
No, you can call it Exhibit 2 then.
Oh, I love it.
You have one printed, the chicken mark Exhibit 2. Yeah, it's there.
There you go, what do you got?
Just label that one Exhibit 2.
It's a,
You have one there, Howard.
Yeah, he's got it.
I
this
see
is
it.
Jackman,
Yeah.
Correct.
and this is
You
Jewett,
said
and this is
that
Jewett.
procedure of
But
Mr.
there's
Chairman.
there's
I made
houses
that motion.
coming up to Jewett.
Motion's been made and is there a second?
Yes,
You guys want to flip a coin?
No, he can have.
Seconded by Mr. Watts. Any discussion?
Yes,
Yeah, for shit's sake.
we've lost Hazen Court,
No, we
right?
haven't, we've gained
changed
Jewett
it to
Street,
Jewett Street.
67,
It's
77,
not on the map.
There
79
was no
hours.
Hazen Court on the official town map.
There is,
Now,
there is no
everybody's
Hazen
happy
Court.
because everybody has a street that they live on, shown on the town map, so that when they wanna go A&R their property, they can.
And it's been requested by all of the current residents on that street.
I would also like to suggest that we ask Wendy to send each one of the residents of those properties a little note saying what we've done.
Great idea.
That'd be nice. Nice.
Can we vote on the motion?
I would love to.
Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition?
I abstain because I don't feel that we should eliminate Hazen Court, the name, or Jewett Street, the name. Because what you're creating here,
Jason Court Street.
even though their deeds, for years, their deeds have been saying Jewett Street, and their addresses, I don't know what they're
They
getting
say
from
Jewett
mail.
Street.
But that sign has been up there
Who
for,
cares? It's a sign.
since 65, when that 95 was built.
Who put the sign up?
And now you're gonna,
Town did.
it's kind of like a historical thing
Well,
to keep the name.
I think it's one of those historical things that we
She's-
want to
she's-
squash.
She's the most vocal advocate of
Yeah,
doing away with.
But that was Hazen Court before she moved there.
No, it wasn't.
No, it wasn't.
It was never Hazen Court.
What's
Yes,
the
it was.
name
Fred True
of the
wrote that
road
onto the
behind it?
official town map on
Somebody
his own.
wrote that.
There was never any action by the town or the planning board to name it as Hazen Court.
Right. But now you're putting it
Did we
down
do
there as
everything
Jewett
tonight?
Street on our own.
we've
Can I ask an audience
we've had
question?
everything on the,
Bang it out.
other than.
Go for it.
What's the name of the road that goes over the highway?
Who's the
Jackman.
No.
No, that's
Jackman.
Jewett Street.
Jewett Street till you get to
No,
over there.
Jackman.
It's Jackman.
No,
Where
it's
does
a
Jackman
Jackman
do it?
Street when you reach
Jackman
Jewett
starts here,
Street.
heads out.
I'll bet you
This is
$1,000.
Jewett,
This is
Jewett,
Jackman
Jewett.
Street.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, so Jackson starts at that
At
intersection.
that
Yeah,
intersection.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
It
Yes,
is.
it is.
No, Jackman goes
It's
over.
like, I mean, the state created
No,
it.
Jackman
No.
used to.
Right here. And on-
Jackman's right here. Jewett Street used to cross right here.
Yeah.
This is new Jewett Street. This is the old Jewett Street. Jackman starts
you-
right here.
No,
Your
it
new
You
doesn't.
drive
Jewett
95
Street-
north, this is Jackman
Your
Street.
new Jewett Street used to be Jackson.
If I lose,
It
my
says-
meal goes to
It
Chris.
says Jewett Street. I drive under that
Wendy
bridge all the time.
And Howard.
How much would you like to?
No, I know it.
It's
You're right.
over the
but he-
bridge
he
that
might
it
be right
starts
here.
to be
No,
Jackman.
he's wrong.
No, no, it
Hey.
might be that this.
Gentlemen, can I interrupt you
on the
for a
west
minute,
side.
please?
Of course.
Wendy and Howard, would we make sure that the residences, people that all of these addresses get notice of, and maybe a copy of exhibit,
Yeah, I'll copy them.
please?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like a motion to
There's no
adjourn.
Jackman Street sign.
Make a motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Have we done the?
Second.
Motion made and seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Yes, I have discussion.
Who won the second?
Have we,
Bob,
Me.
to the planner's satisfaction, do you want to bring procurement and MVPC to the next meeting?
I can bring it to the 25th.
Great.
25th.
Thank you.
Oh, all right, okay.
Okay, any further
Our
discussion?
next meeting is on the,
Being no
one
fur-
question, one question.
Oh.
Our next meeting is when?
18th,
The 18th.
next week, Wednesday.
Okay, but that's not showing on the agenda.
That's one of
No.
your special meetings,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
That'll be medical marijuana.
I will be coming back from vacation for that meeting.
Enjoy.
So this is, next week we got, next Wednesday we got another one of these.
Yeah, purely for medical
It's Lisa
marijuana.
Lane too.
I'm gonna need it.
Lisa Lane. How could it be Lisa
Lisa
Lane?
Lane's on there too.
Oh,
Why? Because it was regular, you told me, and the whole agenda from that meeting has been carried to the 18th. And Lisa
oh,
Lane is on it.
everything moved over.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Oh, for some reason, I thought it was just medical marijuana that night.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Unanimous.
Unanimous.
Meeting.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Now, 10:13.
I know, I know.
10:08.
10:08.
Seven.
This is Jewett Street sign.
Yeah.
When does this meet?